A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, Din Djarin has bathed in the living waters, thus redeeming himself of the sin of taking off his helmet and showing his face. Bo-Katan not only bore witness, she too was redeemed in saving Din Djarin. And while she was rescuing him from the depths of the waters, she saw something. A creature long thought to be extinct, a creature that has been part of Mandalorian lore for centuries. Bo-Katan wrestles with these new feelings. And while other events take place in the galaxy, we have one question for you. Why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep sitting here talking about this show? It's because we are the Fake Nerd Podcast, and this is Fake Nerds Watch Mandalorian Season 3, Episodes 4 through 6. I am Ben Magnet, and with me, as always, is Brandon T. McClure.
Not as always. I wasn't here last time you talked about the Mandalorian.
Shit, that you are 100% correct. You were not here last time.
But I'm here
Most
now,
of the
and that's
time.
the important thing.
Yes, you are. Sparkz Witty is here with me as well.
Yeah, don't take it personally, Ben. Brandon almost always introduces us as always, joined by us on the podcast. I'm like, we are infrequent. We are not consistent. Sometimes one of us is absent for sickness or other reasons.
No, you're always in my heart.
Always right here.
Always.
Yeah. And last, but most definitely not least, Ryan Eliopolis.
Hello. Let's talk about the Mandalorian. I have spoken.
I have spoken.
This is the way.
So
Catchphrases.
We'll jump in on 4 through 6. Brandon, just a real quick broad strokes, because you weren't with us last time. How did you feel about episodes 1 through 3? Just real general overall vibe.
You know what's so cool? I watched your episode.
Uh-huh.
I normally don't do that, just because time reasons. But I decided I had some time because recording time was pushed tonight. That I was like, you know what, I should really do that because I want to know. I want to be on board with what they were going with. So I did that. So I think you'll be surprised to hear that 3 is my favorite episode of the show so far.
That doesn't surprise me.
I really like that. I really like that episode. I totally agree with you guys on episode 1. It's awful episode. There's just no point in having it exist, frankly. And it just kind of exists to be like, we know you didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, so here's that again.
Right.
And
to set up episode 5, which we'll talk about here. Like it's the foundational work for episode 5 to happen, but like I don't know that justifies everything about that episode.
Yeah. Episode 2, episode 2 is where my problems with the show starts, and they continue into these batches of episodes, so that'll get into quite frequently. But yeah, I really liked episode 3. I thought it's exactly the kind of things that I wanted just Star Wars to explore. I agree with Ben. Ben talked a lot about how Ben and Ryan actually talked a lot about how this really shouldn't be in the Mandalorian. Like the Mandalorian did inherit what Rangers of the New Republic was going to be, and they really shouldn't be in the show. But because I'm so disinterested in the main character of this show, I was happy for the detour, and I was very much on board with maybe not seeing Din Djarin that whole episode, because I was like, actually, this is the show I want. I'm here for this show right now.
Yeah. As you already know from my takes on episode 3, my biggest problem with episode 3, because I really like that episode, is just the ending in execution is too confusing.
Yeah.
Like with clarity on what is going on with her. And like specifically with the other New Republic people around
return
her.
to that in any of these episodes. So
we return to her, but we still don't know like what is up with all those New Republic. Like it is not clear what her goal is. Yeah. And like what angle she was playing. But that's not, we'll get into similar stuff. Sorry, continue.
No, but that's basically all I got for the first 3 episodes, and I'm sure I'll reference back to my feelings of them before. I rewatched the 3 episodes that we're talking right now because I watched a lot of Mandalorian in a really short time.
Sure.
So I wanted to not kind of cross-pollinate, but I'm sure I'll reference those first 3 episodes and some of the thoughts that I had, because some of the problems that I have with those 3 episodes do continue into these 3. So
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
If you don't mind, I'll say what episodes we're talking about, titles, directors, writers. All
but
that.
I wrote it down. Yeah. It's
Oh,
fine.
I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no, it's fine. It's fine.
No. Please. You are the board.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. So we're talking about chapters 20, 21, and 22, which are titled The Foundling, The Pirate, and Guns for Hire. So the Foundling is directed by Carl Weathers, written by Jon Favreau. They're all written by Jon Favreau. I'm just going to get that right out of the way. All written by Jon Favreau.
Also writing credit to Dave Filoni.
There's a story credit to Dave Filoni in The Foundling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. Peter Ramsey directed The Pirate, and Bryce Dallas Howard directed Guns for Hire.
Why is Bryce not going with the titles? Why are you breaking tradition, Bryce? Not that I'm mad at it. I'm just.
I checked this. Those had been broken before.
No, I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
It's not. It is. I didn't know they had been broken before. So I was about to ask a very ignorant question. Apparently, so
it's more consistent than not, is what I mean.
It's common, but like going back to the first season, there were episodes that didn't use it.
Yeah.
I'll go real quick. I think the last 2 episodes are, for me, kind of coupled with episode 3, my favorites of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They're at least doing the things that I'm more interested in the season, because of the avenues that they're starting to like reach towards and go down. But I find this season uneven. I understand why a lot of people are like responding the way they do. I kind of like really ended up on my back foot, kind of really getting defensive about this last episode, only because like I also had reactions about that episode, but I did not think they were anywhere near as explosive as like other people who had been very pro and positive the show up to this episode, when I had been like, no guys, like this is dragging its feet. What are you talking about? Specifically Ringerverse, where I think like a lot of the hosts there had set up expectations about what the season would be, that specifically around the Darksaber, that I just never really thought was true about the show. I guess not to the degree that they did, not necessarily putting the same stakes on it that they were.
Sure.
And so that level of disappointment where I'm like, this was never really what the show was about to me. So, but what I will say in a broad sense is I think that the absolute chief problem I'm seeing overall with season 3 is that Grogu should not have been here for this. He's just kind of an accessory to Din in this season, and I'm like, this is exactly the thing we should have been doing while they were apart, and then like bring Grogu back later. The decision to bring Grogu back prematurely, I think, is the thing that has most hurt this season, because like all of the way that all of this happening would affect Din, I think would be so much more impactful if it were like his still draw to want Grogu to be by his side for it. And I think that like all of this lands in a different way if Din doesn't have Grogu by his side, and the decision to put him there feels like misguided at best.
And sometimes it doesn't even matter that Grogu's even there, because he's just like hanging out with Lizzo, and that's not like a quality thing. That's just like, what's the point of them even being together if they're just like not even interacting or doing anything together of importance? Like I vibe check from last batch of episodes. I'm about to say I'm a little weaker, to be honest. There are lots of really fun things in all 3 of these episodes, just like the last batch. But I'm just, with 2 episodes left, I'm just like, man, like where are we going? Lots of things happening. I don't particularly like how things are being resolved. You know, just my you know, where I think stories should go. I'm like, oh, we resolved that. I think they are. Whether you think they are or not, I think the show is setting up the Darksaber stuff a lot. They have been doing that since like season 1 with like Moff and stuff. And I think the way that they handle that with Din, I'm just like, why did it even have it for so long if you're just gonna like give it away like so like anticlimactically, which we'll talk about later. Lots of cool stuff, but again, you know, I think if this is the Mandalorian's always going to be more like this. I'm starting to like, man, I'm starting to have like nostalgia for Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, which is a weird thing to say because those are new shows. Those aren't that old. But I'm like, man, I should have loved those seasons more, I think, because that is what I want the Mandalorian to be. Like, these are still episodes of the week, but it's also trying to tie into this bigger thing. But like most of the episode is the episode of the week, and then here's the rest of the plot, and then let's do the next episode, and here's a little bit of plot with the one episode of the week thing. I'm just like, I'll just like focus on something, please. I think Jack Black's hilarious, but like internet's divided on that. That's I don't know. I don't know about the season, to be honest.
Ben, your initial thoughts?
Kind of echoing a little bit of what Ryan said, but mostly my vibe check for these next batch of episodes is kind of the same. Maybe the needle's jumping up and down because, like Ryan said, there is a lot of good stuff for this season, but there's also a lot of stuff that isn't the best. And the more I think about it, the more I stew on it, the more I feel that the show is, or this season in particular, is just trying to get a season out so they can set up for something bigger down the line. And the way I just feel like they're setting stuff up for the future poorly. Like I get there are some seasons and some things of types of television and films where they do set stuff up, but they just do it better. And I honestly can't tell why I feel about this, or it's really hard because the more I think about it, is like they're just like setting up some stuff. They're just setting up some stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's like anything is getting resolved. Like I also have feelings about the end of episode 6. But at the same time, I love seeing Bo-Katan and Jin together. I think they're awesome. I love them. I kind of ship them, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, it's just like, where are we going with this? Just what's the plan? What's the
It's Ahsoka.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, I think we all are on the same page, honestly. Because I feel much the same way. And the reason why I personally feel this way is because Forrest said something last time you guys talked about this, that he was never bored, and I vehemently disagree. I was constantly bored. I find this show to be quite boring many times now, where I didn't before. And I more than once in these 3 episodes. No, maybe not these 3, because I think I was a little bit more interested. Episode 6 I actually did enjoy, but we'll get into it. And the reason why I'm so bored is because Din Djarin is a passive participant in his own story, and I don't find that very compelling in most stories. I think there is a way you can do it right, but I prefer a main character who is actively engaging with the story that is happening, and he is progressing the plot further. And he is guiding the guiding force for the story. But the story is forcing Din on specific journeys that he doesn't care about because he's got Grogu now. Why does he care about any of this? Because he's got Grogu and he can do whatever he wants. And I just kind of felt like I don't up until episode 6 I felt this way, and I don't know. That's really my biggest issue with the show comes from, is that Din is so disinterested in the story that is happening to him, and I don't understand why he's even there.
Yeah. At Celebration this weekend, Rick Famuyiwa, who is director of some of these episodes, he gave an interesting interview that said, the Mandalorian, much like the titles of these episodes, they have multiple meanings. Now we're at a stage where the Mandalorian doesn't just mean Din Djarin. So, this season we're focusing more on Bo. And whether you like that or not, that's just what the show's doing. And that's what the producers and directors are doing, and knowingly doing to Din.
And I think this goes back to the Book of Boba Fett never should have been titled just the Book of Boba Fett. It should have been titled The Mandalorian : Book of Boba Fett, or just The Mandalorian season 3, but been about Boba Fett.
This could have been the Book of Bo-Katan,
yeah. I think that the responses to the Bo-Katan and Din on the back burner stuff would be a lot less if we considered Book of Boba Fett part of the Mandalorian show. Mm-hmm. And that the Mandalorian, like we suggested way back when Book of Boba Fett was teased, that after Mandalorian season 2, we were the next season might just be about Boba Fett, and that's the Mandalorian can stand in for multiple people. It's not just about Din.
Yeah.
But I think because you separate Book of Boba Fett, everybody's the Mandalorian is about Din and Grogu, and that is fighting the concept of what we're doing, centering Bo-Katan. And And I think that also, along with like the Grogu reunion in Book of Boba Fett, makes this all a misstep. Because again, like, doesn't that work better if we consider that The Mandalorian season 3 and this The Mandalorian season 4? Doesn't that work better that Grogu and him got reunited to an extent? Now, I would still say that during these story beats, Grogu and him still should have been separated, but you know, at least it would have happened on the same consistent show.
And you bringing that up actually kind of clicked something in my head. I think that Din would actually be more engaged in the story that's happening if Grogu wasn't here, because
that's what I'm saying.
He has no interest in anything that's going on because he's now got Grogu. His job is to train Grogu to be a Mandalorian now. He has no interest in anything else.
Well, so this is my thing, is that like, and I think this is true, and I don't think this is a wrong thing about the character, is that one of the reasons why the Darksaber thing, I got on one of the Ringerverse host Jomi's tweets talking about the fact that the call to action to me for Din has never been the Darksaber, because he was talking about like him handing over the Darksaber as him refusing the call to action. And I'm like, that's not Din's call to action. It never has been. He's like, there's a difference between like saying he's a reluctant leader. That's just not been his call to action. His call to action became Grogu.
Yeah.
That is his call to action. His call to adventure is Grogu. It wasn't about the Darksaber. It's about Grogu. It's about being Grogu's dad. And it's about finding an existence in being a Mandalorian that allows him to also be with Grogu and be a parental figure to Grogu.
He should never have had the Darksaber then, though. And to give it up the way that he did, it was like, why didn't he do it in the cave when he got rescued?
I won't disagree with that. Yeah. I won't disagree with any of that. That like, you're right, but like that is consistent. Like this character of Din never wanted that. He never wanted to be he tried to give it to Bo-Katan to begin with. Like, it's understandable why Bo-Katan refused it at the time. Like, this got her in trouble last time in front of Sabine and everything. And like, I don't think it's meant to be like a strategic move on Din's part, that like the knowledge that saying that there, like his whole thing is like, Din only cares about the future of Mandalore right now, right? For Grogu, let's say. Like, he cares about what will Mandalore be for Grogu, and he wants all the Mandalorians together. So he's working towards that purpose. And he sees the clearest path towards that purpose is getting all the Mandalorians together. And how do we do that? These Mandalorians need to believe that Bo-Katan is leader. I have a perfect reason to say that she should have the Darksaber. It's factually true, so it stands up, and I have to do it in front of them so they acknowledge it. Like, I'm not going to say that's a good plot beat, but it follows the logic of what the character believes. And the execution is sloppy. I do not disagree. But these ideas that I think a lot of fans have had, that I've just never had, is this idea that Din would ever be the leader of Mandalore. That's just not where I thought we were going with it. This is not a Jon Snow figure to me. He never was.
Yeah.
That was not the goal. Like, the Darksaber thing was a sticky point, but I never thought that the Darksaber, like, he's never been good at wielding it. It's never been a weapon meant for him. I just don't think that's his goal. I do think long-term, you can make an argument that Grogu is supposed to be long-term the leader of Mandalore, that that's where we're going to go eventually. And I think that there's a perfectly clear path for how we get there, but not Din. I don't think it's Din's purpose. I don't think it's Din's call to action. And so, again, execution could have been better, but I think this was a beat we were always going to get to, and I never thought it was going to turn into like a duel over the Darksaber.
I'm just
not at this point in time.
I'm just saying, we've spent years with this Darksaber. No, and I'm with you, and a lot of people are with you that like Din was never going to be the leader, but you have him hold this thing. You have Bo refuse it multiple times. And then to finally, after a fight that he could have stopped by saying, guys, don't fight. Bo is the natural leader. You don't have to fight. He lets it fight because the script wants a cool fight. Is it that cool? It's just in a giant open field. I don't know. It's so anticlimactic for her becoming the leader of Mandalore. It's like, no, she beat me in a cave. Nobody saw it. You have to believe me. That's so anticlimactic. That is telling the Mandalorians that this happened. None of them saw it. And then Axe, who is this true blue Mandalorian or whatever, he's like, oh yeah, cool. No, that's fine. Like, I don't believe, if I was a Mandalorian and I believed that hard in that like honor shit, that like, no, I don't believe that. That's not real honor. That's like, I just found it really anticlimactic, and like, it's supposed to be big and heroic at the end with her standing in a giant open field with Din next to her. I'm like, that is not like cool. Like, it's all resolved. We're all the Mandalorians are together now. and like this is how it resolved because a Spyborg beat him in a cave that nobody saw.
I don't disagree that I think there are better execution points to get to the same end that are like either Din giving her the Darksaber with the same intent and reasoning after she pulls him out of the machine and he gets up from at the fireplace with her, that you could make the argument there, or that he waits until after she's been in the waters of Mandalore, because then he recognizes her as Mandalorian by his creed. He's like, you should have the Darksaber because of XYZ.
Yeah.
Or you can even do it in episode 6 earlier when they're on the metro thing over to where they are. And he's like, what's your plan? And she's like, I'll figure it out when I get there. And he's like, you should have this. And then gives his reasoning there, and it's private between them. But when she shows up, she already has it.
Those are all
and like
moments.
him being by her side to like she's carrying it, and him being like, yeah, she got it in fair in combat. She defeated the enemy that defeated me.
I want to hear my homies real quick, but I do want to say, like, I do agree with you. Like Bo needed to get the Darksaber. I just think like there are 1,000 better ways they could have done it than like, here you go, you beat me in a cave in 4 episodes ago. Remember that? That's why I was in the flashback previously on. I'm like, and again, I love that Spyborg episode, but I'm like, I see that in the previous one. I'm like, oh my God, is Spyborg coming back? Is the coolest droid monster coming back? Like, no, it's to show you that Din lost. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That's just me though. I know some people are totally fine with it. You know, I was hoping for something a little more hurrah, you know?
Why don't we start? Why don't we go back and talk about the Foundling as an episode real quick?
I guess we could probably do that. That's
fine. Because there's I don't have a lot to say about it. I kind of want to just get it out of the way.
This is I agree. The bird one.
Yeah.
And
it's a bummer because like I love the episode of the week stuff, but I'm like, oh, this is a bad episode of the week.
and this is kind of the thing. This is the best case of the show's directionalist that I've ever seen. Because it's very much like, okay, time to train Grogu, and then out of nowhere, this bird shows up and takes this kid, and then
the first time this has happened.
So the first time this has happened, and then way later in the episode, we find out it's Paz Vizsla's son. And like I don't know. I felt like that reveal should have been earlier.
It's also
personally,
it also like does not land at all. Like I don't care that it's the son at all, to be honest.
No, I mean I think they're trying to. I think they're trying to make Paz Vizsla a more not sympathetic character. I think they're trying to like soften him to Din because of Jon Favreau's just affinity for the Vizsla characters because he played pre-Vizsla, this character's father.
Paz sucks, so
yeah, but this guy sucks. And so,
he sucks.
So like I don't really give a shit that he is doing this. I mean, the speech is like, "Gosh, we're Mandalorian." That's cool, whatever. Yeah. That's not in this episode. But like, I really, this is the most bored I was watching the show is through this episode.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And again, like it's hard when you're trying to serve two masters of you want to do a monster of the week show, but you also want to tell a big grand narrative, right? Like, that's why I'm starting to think like I really liked season 2. Because, like, you know, we got, like, it ended with a big Luke thing. That's huge. But also, there were still plenty of good, you know, like, just cool, fun one-off episodes. And so, like, I can see where it's building to. But I'm like, we spent so much of one episode doing this one thing that's disconnected from the actual plot, right?
I also think that, like... So this is also the episode that has the Order 66 flashback that Ben had been dreading.
I already forgot about. Yeah.
God, man. Okay, can we talk about?
May we hold off on that because I think that Grogu thing is like entirely separate from everything else, and that's in the episode. Yeah, it's in my opinion the most valuable thing about the episode. And
I agree. I just want to say one thing, and then I agree with you completely. It's disconnected from the episode.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel like it should be connected to this episode.
Real quick. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Just to emphasize this point, I literally forgot that flashback scene was in there until you brought it up.
Sure. I think it's an important one. I just think, like, I didn't forget that it happened, but like, I forget everything else around it. Like, it's not. Anyway, everything else around this in the episode serves a singular purpose, which is a purpose that could have been handled in 5 minutes instead of the entirety of the rest of the episode, which is this is not a good home for the Mandalorians. That's it. That's the only point they're trying to get across. This is
Yeah.
not the place where they should be putting down their roots. It's a place where they're at risk all the time.
True.
Now it keeps other people away from finding them, but it's dangerous, and that's the whole point for like the next episode, right? So establishing that idea, you can do the same thing except have Bo-Katan shoot the thing out of the air and get the kid.
It's
Like-
really funny that like one, they don't have enough jetpack fuel to get anywhere, and two, they don't have any ships. They're like stranded there. I'm like, how did you get there? Where are all your ships at?
Yeah,
I had
we
the
have no
same
ship.
thought.
I'm like,
I had the
what?
same thought.
I was like, maybe don't put that line in there because you have to actually think about those like
This is not only, I think, the weakest episode of the season. I think it might be the worst episode of The Mandalorian in general. It's a battle.
worse than one.
It's a battle between this and one, but like one at least, I'm kind of enjoying at least seeing like Babu Frick's species.
You know what? No,
and,
you got me.
and Carl Weathers,
bad baby.
and like we at least have Din like teaching Grogu map stuff and all this kind of
No,
like
you're right.
navigation things. Like there's some stuff there, and to be honest, like you have the same beat that we're talking about, which is this is a dangerous place for the Mandalorians in that episode as
That's
well.
true. That's true.
So like it's just reinforced here. But because it's the entire focus of the episode, I think like the only other thing of value that I kind of like about this episode is Bo-Katan's centered stuff, which is, you know, like two specific beats. The one at the campfire where it says, because you are war leader, you have the honor of sitting by the fire, which I just think is cool. Anything that deepens like the way that they believe that and operate their systems is cool.
Mhm.
But it's also Bo-Katan having the conversation about seeing the mythosaur with the armorer,
Mhm.
which I think is a great one and like super valuable. But it's, again, ostracized from most of the events that happen in this episode. It's cool that this is kind of the thing that like wins people over to Bo-Katan completely. But again, you could have gotten the same effect in a shorter amount of time and like spent all this episode runway on something else.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just kind of also like it. This episode in particular, I think makes the Mandalorians kind of look goofy and kind of not capable in a way that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
And I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
this is also the episode that I started getting really concerned for a plot thread that you actually brought up in the last episode, Sparkz, which is that Bo-Katan and the armorer are kind of becoming buddies, and this goes into something else that I'm something that I'm not quite understanding about this show, but that's in the next episode, and I'm happy to wait. But like this is kind of Bo-Katan is kind of just sitting there going like, you know, maybe this is the way. Maybe this is the way. Maybe I like the way.
So I was resistant to it, and I had to go back and remind myself of Bo-Katan's complete history to start being a little more on board with the way that we're doing her here, right? Which is that she was a member of Death Watch. Not only was she a member of Death Watch, she was Vizsla's right-hand person in Death Watch. She was against Satine. She was considered a terrorist for her belief system, which this is descended from. She believed in a more proper warrior Mandalorian way that the others were not following. And going back to that idea, and like a lot of Bo-Katan after Vizsla's death and Darth Maul takes over Death Watch is based in this kind of backing away because she feels bad because, you know, Satine ended up dying and all this kind of stuff that she feels responsible for, which makes her doubt that she was in the right. But seeing the mythosaur has brought her back around to like, maybe I was right the first time. And I'm kind of okay with that. Like when you take an extended lore and you look at the concept, like Bo-Katan having this challenge of her old faith and her old belief systems resurfacing, I think that's fine. I actually like that. I'm not saying it's being as well explored as I want it to in this show, but I do think like as a person who's not just watching The Mandalorian and as a person who has watched Bo-Katan and these other things and like refreshing myself on that knowledge, I'm like, I see how this arc of like, I believe this thing, I fell out of the belief of this thing because it made me feel like I was responsible for a lot of the tragedy that befell the people I cared about and Mandalore. And then coming back around to, I have seen a thing that has shaken my belief system back into what I used to value. That is a worthwhile arc, I think. Yes.
Hi, Ryan Leopolis from the Fake Nerd Podcast. Katie Sackhoff has been doing a bunch of interviews, and I'm Mr. Interview because I love watching people talk about their crafts and stuff. And her specifically talking about potentially joining these Mandalorians and joining the Armor is that she has been through so much tragedy and so much suffering. And like, wouldn't it be nice to have a family again? And wouldn't it be nice to be accepted into something? And again, the execution is what I'm still struggling with, but I agree with you, Sparkz, that like the idea I'm okay with. I do like the idea because I don't want her just to sit alone on a throne very uncomfortably for the rest of her life. Like I want that girl to be happy.
I would have to.
Like, I need a little more. I need a little more from the show.
I would have to digest it more because oftentimes Sparkz has a way of smoothing things over in my head that I can convince me of an idea that
you say it like I'm a manipulator into tricking you.
No, but you have
something that isn't real.
You have a way of putting things into a perspective that allows things to be more digestible to me.
Sure.
And it's because we've known each other for 15 years, maybe longer. Definitely longer. And like, so I can see that. I see what you're saying, but I think the execution for me is just so horrendously terrible that I would need to digest. I would need a few days to digest this. And as it stands, I just watched this episode this morning.
No, and like
they've also had very little scenes together enough for me to like believe that like they're just that close now. Like
what I mean specifically is not necessarily like the bonding between Bo-Katan and the Armorer, right? But the idea that Bo-Katan is changed when she comes out of those waters and like decides, I think I do want to leave the helmet on. I kind of want to. I'm indulging something that I used to believe, and I think especially like thinking about, not me, but like talking to my friends who have been involved in religion and then stepped away from it, and how they came to it and how they left it and all that kind of stuff. Like this idea of being like your entire system being reawakened to something you believed, or shaken back into a system that you had a massive moment to experience and connect with. I think that's very cool. I think it's very Star Wars, and I think that it's very valuable for Bo-Katan's story to do that. So I like this idea of her being kind of welcomed back and a yearning to be part of what is essentially the descending piece of what she used to be part of, what she used to found and believe in. And that part I think works. And I think frankly, it's an amount of like not enough of the story in the season being spent on Bo-Katan doing that.
Yes.
Like you can make the argument like Bo-Katan is the central figure of the season, and she is, but we still aren't getting enough of that. Like it should be more on the forefront. Frankly, I wish they were bringing up more of her history, the history that we do know if you've watched Clone Wars and all this stuff, to the forefront of her making these decisions, so that it's more present on the minds of all viewers. Regardless,
and you wouldn't need much. You wouldn't need much. You just need You just need her to confide in Din.
No, because like anybody who's watched The Mandalorian, when Bo-Katan shows up and she says, "Oh, she's part of Din's part of that cult, and your cult is part of like the Children of the Watch, who were responsible for like the real ostracization of the Mandalorians from each other, blah 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 blah." If you don't know the extended canon, you don't know that Bo-Katan also was part of that same group at one point, like that she was part of the earlier iteration of the same thing. And that's really important. That's an important part of who she is and her history and why she would be coming back around to this. This isn't her being convinced of something for the first time. This is her coming back to an original version of herself.
Like reclaiming it. Yeah.
Ben,
do you have any thoughts about Bo-Katan and Mando?
Honestly, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I love them together. I love it when I kind of ship them. I love it when they go on adventures. I just like the banter between the two of them.
Now you're talking about Bo-Katan and the Armorer, right? That's who you're shipping. I just want to be clear.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I don't ship the two of them. I think that's an awful pairing.
There's a fun theory that I don't believe. But people think that the Armor might be like a Dathomir lady or like a Zabrak who has like horns or something. I don't know why people think that, but I'm like, that'd be fun. Like she used to be a Molly.
But one thing I will admit about Bo-Katan is that I am glad that we are focusing, or we're giving her some spotlight, because I never watched. I've seen Clone Wars, but I've never seen Clone Wars the entire way through.
Sure.
So watching stuff with Bo-Katan, with this character, is making me want to make some time, carve out some time, and watch the Clone Wars so I can get all the extra juicy spiciness that deals with Bo-Katan.
You only really need to look up the Mandalorian episodes and you'll be fine.
True. But then there's also some like cool stuff in it. But that's it.
Well, the Clone Wars operates as a very standalone arcs, much like Andor. So you could theoretically just watch the episodes that are centered around Bo-Katan, and you would not miss much.
Neat. But besides that, I really don't have any major problems with Bo-Katan, to be perfectly honest. And when Sparkz, when you were talking earlier about how the director's been saying, yeah, the show is called The Mandalorian, but it's not focused on Din Djarin as we've known for.
You are the worst.
Son of a bitch, I am the worst.
That's okay. That's okay. Credits to Ryan.
Why?
It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's just funny.
As one insert name here was talking about earlier.
Sparkz, go in and put in a name.
Ryan.
Oh God, what was my point? The point was the naming convention for The Mandalorian about how even though we've known for 2 seasons that it's Din Djarin, but maybe we're just going to shift focus to Bo-Katan. Maybe we're going to shift focus to other Mandalorians. That I like the idea, but I don't think they're executing it well.
Yeah, I think there's something to what Sparkz is saying, and I can definitely see the idea that they're playing with. It's just there's a case to be made that, you know, in storytelling, err on the side of caution, probably show don't tell. It's something like this that you're seeing a character who, like Ben. Let's just take a person like Ben who has only seen The Mandalorian, not seen a lot of Clone Wars, maybe seen no Clone Wars, not seen Rebels, not seen Bo-Katan's arc up until this point.
That's most people probably watching the show, to be honest.
Right. You're not getting the full picture. So what this looks like is this girl who showed up not being part of the way is all of a sudden being like, hey, you know what? I like the way. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid now, and it's kind of jarring. But it would
Din jarring.
I didn't do it on purpose. And it would honestly, quite frankly, a lot would change because you've got room to do however many minutes you want to do in these episodes. That you could have just a moment where Din and Bo are sitting there being like, you know, and Bo just being like, you know, I was part of this thing, and it's kind of nice to have a family again. That's really all you need,
right? No, you're right. Like, I do think that again, it was because I went back and refreshed myself, right? And had to remind myself of like her history, like just in a broad stroke, like where has Bo-Katan been before this? That I was like, you know, I really do like this turn for the character, but I like it because I'm putting it into relation of her history, and the show on its own is not doing that. Yeah. And I do think that's a flaw. I think that's a problem. I think that the live action show should have brought it up by now, like why this is really important and really a better choice for Bo-Katan, and why it's so rich in character development. And it's half of that if you don't know. And I think that's a problem. I do. Yeah. And it's one of the things I think episode 4 should have been about instead of all the bird chasing stuff. They kill that mom, and then they take 3 baby birds, and I don't know what happened to them.
If the episode was a character study about Bo-Katan rather than a really boring rescue for Mandalorians, I'm so much more interested in this.
Of how much CGI money they could have saved if you just had a bunch of people talking, which is what, like, spoiler, we like just people talking. Like, you don't have to have a random 20-minute bird action scene that we're never going to remember.
Yeah, I don't care for a lot of the stuff that's in this episode, but I do. Now we'll talk about it. Care about the Grogu PTSD flashback to Order 66. I really like this. Frankly, looking back, and my mom watched the episodes of Book of Boba Fett to get caught up for this season that were about like the last 3 episodes, so she could watch this season of Mandalorian and know all the stuff with the characters. I wish that Order 66 moment wasn't in that one. I don't think it did a lot. Like it's kind of pointless. It's like Luke is like, do you want me to help you remember? And all it does is let us know that like Grogu was there during Order 66. And like Luke doesn't comment on it. Grogu isn't changed by it. I don't know why we do it. It's kind of stupid. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things I think are stupid about that episode, but that's neither here nor there. But in hindsight, I'm like, I'd rather this was the first time we saw that. I'd rather this was the first time we saw that, and then we got all of the information, and we got the appearance of Ahmed Best returning as the Jedi that was crafted by him in conjunction with Lucasfilm for the challenge show that was on YouTube. The kids like Temple
Jedi,
challenge show.
Yeah.
But Kelleran Beck is a Jedi master who is designed to be like a teacher of children, like a person who's really investing in the future of young Padawans. And that's like, while that was useful for the show, that is supposed to be just who this character is. So it's really cool to see him be that for Grogu.
Because in the lore, like he is the dude who would be like looking after these kids. So it's like, yeah, get the teacher for the kids. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's and it's a like a returning actor. Like it's
awesome. It's really cool. It's really cool for Ahmed Best.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say the internet response to Ahmed Best showing up was really nice. Like all over TikTok, you would hear like the mashup of Someday Out There and the How to Train Your Dragon test flight music, or it's hit, or the Star Wars main theme, the epic version from the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and it's just like people are just talking about how he overcame Jar Jar Binks and became this badass Jedi, and people are like, we are sorry, we feel bad now.
Honestly, for me, not enough people are saying we're sorry.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are saying, yeah, he was redeemed and he doesn't need redemption.
He never needed redemption.
I'm so happy for him to have this role.
Me too.
I really like the Order 66 flashback sequence, honestly. My only issue with it is that it's disconnected from the episode and doesn't quite make sense where they put it in this episode, in this season, honestly. And I just think that, like, outside of that, it creates a lot of questions that I still have. Like, okay, well, now we know the Jedi that saved Grogu. Why? Where do they go? And I'm so eager to find out those answers. And it's a nice place to be, because I like learning something and then still having more to learn about a character, about a character arc. Grogu's memories of Order 66 are more engaging to me than Din's story in this season.
Yeah. I really like that sequence. I think it's really cool. I think it answers a lot of good questions, and like you said, Brand, leaves open the door still for more. And I don't disagree about it being disconnected, but I do think the idea of the scene, right, about it being the armor talking about what it takes to be Mandalorian and what you have to embrace about who you've been and who you'll become. And as the Forge is going, triggering his flashbacks, which, if we remember, also her working at the Forge triggered the flashbacks we saw about Din when we saw him as a child in season 1 with the battle droid. It's the same. It's the same mirror parallel of what's triggering those flashbacks. I kind of like that as an impetus. I won't disagree. Like, it's kind of disconnected from the narrative of the larger episode and even the larger season, because, again, like, Grogu kind of shouldn't be in the season up to this point, in my opinion, because this is maybe the only scene of real value with him. But
wait, the Lizzo scene where
I won't go that far. I'll actually say, like, there's stuff in episode 2 that's pretty great, with Din and Grogu and him learning the navigation and going to get Bo-Katan and everything. So I'll back off that being the only thing. But, like, this is one of the most valuable for sure. And while it's not entirely connected, the idea of all of it, how he comes about it, why it happens, all of that, I think I really, really like. Another thing I really like is that when Kelleran Beck gets him to the ship, it's a Naboo ship.
Yep,
I like that too.
Which means there's only 2 people who it could possibly have been who sent that ship for him, Jar Jar. Which is it's either Jar Jar or it's Padme, and both of those answers are awesome.
Yeah,
I would prefer if Ahmed Best sent Grogu to Ahmed Best.
Right.
I think that's a great thing.
I think either way, like, it's great. Like, it's great. That is actual redemption for Jar Jar, right? Like, that is a redeeming factor for Jar Jar, is that Jar Jar was actively trying to save Padawans from the destruction at the Jedi Temple because he cared about them. That's a really good move to give to Jar Jar. But I think it's also very cool if you tie it into the notion that Padme saw the temple on fire and sent people to go help the Padawans. I think that's also super great.
Yeah.
Either one, I'm happy to have as an answer, but the fact that I just like that it's a Naboo ship. I think that's really, really cool.
So there's also something that I wanted to talk about in relation to the scene that I think is a good place to bring it up. The chase sequence is very good. It's very exciting. It's very interesting. And I'll use that to say that I think the VFX in this season are better than what we've seen from Star Wars shows in a while. specifically Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, and I think better than season 2 of The Mandalorian. I can't feel the volume quite as often as I did before. And I'm really happy about that.
Sure.
I think the only time I actually really did feel it was at the end of episode 6 with that duel and then just an open field. I definitely kind of felt it there. But otherwise I agree. Like I think they're using it better. Like sometimes like incorporating actual sets with the volume like really helps make that place feel a little more alive than
and especially when
just open space.
Especially like even in episode 6, like when we're in that city, I don't feel like I'm in the volume like I did with Obi-Wan. I feel like I'm in a set, and maybe I'm not because I'm sure they did build the volume there. But like it doesn't feel like it anymore, and I'm really happy about that. I just wanted to just say like just net positive. I think the VFX are much better in the season.
I'll even take it one step further within the season, which is just like I think Coruscant looks better here than it did in episode 3. Like we spent more time in Coruscant in episode 3, but for this snippet, I think it looks very good. In this sequence, I value this. I really like this as just a part of the lore of Grogu in the world of Star Wars, like taken as a microcosm outside of all the things we're talking about that aren't working about this season or how this episode came together, all that kind of stuff. This was a very good choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just the single scene as like this answer of the question. Very, very good choice. I think that kind of wraps up episode 4.
Yeah, let's move on to episode 5.
Yeah, I think episode 5 might be my favorite of this season. There's definitely a possibility for it because
is this Pirate Captain Gorian Shard and his little Shmee?
Yeah,
his little Shmee.
I really like this. I think it's like this and episode 6 both have like hard live action Clone Wars energy to me. But this one, I really like the logic of giving the Mandalorians a place to actually rest themselves publicly. And the fact that Din, like, I feel this is the most involved Din is in the progression of the Mandalorians at large, right? Because he's saying, like, I have this offer from Grief Karga who wants to give me land. And like that land doesn't have to be just for me. That land can be for all Mandalorians, that we can establish a home, an actual home, and start gathering ourselves again because we deserve to live in light. And I think that's really cool. I think as a trajectory of where the season was trying to get us, right? That the Mandalorians were living in a place that wasn't good for them. Clunky as that whole piece of the story was told through the season up to this point, this being the resolution of that. They have a planet. They don't have a home planet, but they have a home. A great line from Grief Karga. Really, really like it. I like the pirates. The pirates are just fun. We talked about him last time, but Nanzo Anansi coming back as Pirate Captain Gorian Shard.
You have to say his full name every single time.
I think he's a ton of fun. Again, like a very good Clone Wars villain done in live action.
That whole crew are all a bunch of pirate puppet men almost.
The Mandalorians dropping in to save this city that they'd had to abandon before when they used to live in the sewers, and like getting to go back to that place that was such a core foundational establishment of this Mandalorian story, and revisit the Forge and all that kind of stuff. This all really, really works for me in this episode. I think it all clicks along, and I like the emotionality and intent of it.
So I'm really happy this episode happened because I was really afraid I wouldn't get to talk about Pirate Captain Gorian Shard. Because I love him.
Yep.
He's incredible. That suit is incredible. Everything about his ship, awesome. I love it. I love him. I'm in love with him. I'll marry him.
The commitment to him just having like a puppet mouth.
Yeah.
In a huge, big blockbuster show. I'm like,
he's got like the cane and his hobbling.
God bless you guys. Cause like, man, that thing looks so good, but it's clearly like, that's a puppet man. It looks so good. Right. His little Shmee. I couldn't believe it. I loved it.
And I really like the talking hammer for the Mandalorian group, where Din gives them this offer of like, what we can do, and then passes it to Vizsla, and Vizsla has that setup of like, why should we do this? It's because we are Mandalorian, and it's because these people understand the way, both Bo-Katan, Kryze, and Din Djarin. They are leading us to the way for our people, the way for a future. So we should go do this. And I think that's actually, this is the moment where I felt like, okay, we are heading on the path of like, we're gonna see like the revival of the Mandalorians now through this show, and I'm really about that. I didn't want them living in caves forever, so this coming into the city bit is really great to me.
So I think for me, my biggest issue with this episode is that I still don't care about Din Djarin, and honestly, I don't really care about the Mandalorians anymore, and that's really just kind of my catharsis from the season, just being really disinterested in where the Mandalorians have been going, and Din Djarin specifically. So through Din Djarin, I feel like I was supposed to care about the Mandalorians, but through Din Djarin, I have become disinterested in them. And that's my issue with this episode, is that it's so Mandalorian focused that it's got good action. I really like the pirate captain Gorian Shard, and and there's a specific part of this episode that I just adore, but for the most part, it doesn't quite sing for me the way I wish it did. And maybe if Din had been on a better path this season, this would feel that kind of, I would feel like this triumphant, like, yes, the Mandalorians have a planet, but I'm kind of sitting there going like, I don't really care if you do have a planet, honestly.
Yeah. I am more towards you, Brandon, in a way, because like I'm with you where I do want the Mandalorians to become one. You know, I don't want them to live in sewers and stuff like that. Like I 100% agree with that. But the only Mandalorians I care about are maybe Din, like not so much right now because it's kind of boring, but like Bo, maybe the Armorer. I don't know any of the. I don't care about Paz Vizsla. I don't know any of the other Mandalorians' names. We've been missing Bo's crew for an entire season, and they just show up now. And I'm like, okay, cool. I just care about them because they showed up again. I don't remember you guys. I don't remember them very much. And that's, again, maybe if I rewatched the season recently, I would feel differently. But like, we are gathering so many Mandalorians so quickly, and I'm like, wow, I don't care about 9/10 of this entire.
And I do want to just say, like, I think the action sequence is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Sparkz was absolutely correct in the assessment that it felt like a live action Clone Wars episode. It really does. And I really like the action, like when the Mandalorians go down and Paz Vizsla, who I don't really care about, when he comes down and starts shooting, when the Armorer starts attacking people with her tools. Yeah, all that's really cool, and I'm so into it. I think it's choreographed well, it's shot well,
paralleled well with the ship action. Just to point that out, like the ship action is really great.
And I thought it's very funny when there's like, he's above you, he's below you.
I'm just gonna get out of here. F this.
That was really funny.
Yeah, and that ship, man. Yeah, Pirate Captain Gorian Shard ship is awesome.
Yeah,
I forget what it's called, but like
the Corsair.
The Corsair. Yeah, it's awesome. Corsair, great excellent character. Oh yeah.
And so like there's stuff I really like about this episode. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I was gonna say this is one of the episodes I'm gonna talk the least about because I like this one the most. And really, that's the only reason why I like this episode the most is because of the great action scene. I loved that action scene. I loved how the Mandalorians dropped down. I love the aerial, the dogfights. I just loved everything about it. And I was just like, yay. Because like what Brandon was saying is like, because the previous episode, while I wasn't super bored, I was like, yeah, come on, hurry up. This one, I'm like, what's going to happen?
I will say, like, I think I totally get it for you and for you, Ryan, like both of you. This sense of not caring about the Mandalorians. I think part of the reason that I care about it is because like I still do care about Din, and I think Din this season, to me, his like the future usefulness of his story is tied up in the Mandalorians. Like this season has put those things together, and again, I will say, like, I think that would be stronger and better and resonate more if Grogu were not in the picture at this point in time, that Din were having to kind of do this on his own. I do think that would be better. Obviously, I think that honestly, there's some level where I believe that there was a general trajectory of doing this story with the Mandalorians, and I think that somebody, I don't know who, got scared about trying to do a season of the show without Grogu.
Yeah.
And I think that's very obvious. I don't think Grogu was supposed to get brought back together as early as it happened when they set out to make that season 2 finale. I just can't believe that. And I think they got freaked out and they panicked and they pulled back on the idea. And I think that there would be something so much more rich, right? If like you get to this point and they've established this home planet and you could come up with a million story reasons for this to happen, but now it's time for Din to put Grogu back in the picture with him. Maybe because of what's happening with Grogu, you do the same beat of Grogu deciding he wants to leave, whatever. But it's at this point, it's at this point where like Din has to bring Grogu back into his life, and like you have this more rich texture of like Din has been going further along down the path of his creed, right? He's committed more to it now that he's let Grogu go. And Grogu just said no to a very strict regimen of belief that Luke administered to him. He's not going to be so down with the Mandalorian way either. He's like, neither of these are necessarily right because this doesn't allow me to connect with you either. And that puts Din in conflict and contrast with what's going on.
See, that would be like fun, I know.
Conflict. Right, and I'm like...
That's not what the show wants to do.
I'm pontificating and creating something that isn't there, but like that feels like what you would be doing, right, to centralize the character in the context of the story. But what my point being of like why I still find this valuable regardless of like not caring as much about the Mandalorians, that kind of thing, is because putting them out into this situation is like bringing the Mandalorians out brings Din out now, and so like brings the whole story out to the front. Like the Mandalorians are about to be involved back in the world of Star Wars in a big way. Like they are now back on the board to other players. Like people are going to be aware of them again.
Sounds like to me, and that's there's exciting. More Mandalorians who take Din's spot, so he has less to do.
But what you were talking about, so there's a couple of things that you said that I want to kind of rip off of, if that's okay. One of the things that you said was, and this is kind of repeating what you said in the last episode of Grogu and Din's connection, and the cult kind of getting into that. And one of the things that I'm a little surprised that you haven't brought up is that I do believe that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, if Dave Filoni is even still working on the show in any meaningful capacity, have forgotten that the Watch was established to be a cult, and it's now. And so Din and Grogu throughout all of season 2, the whole point of Din removing his helmet was that because of the creed, because of the way, he couldn't really connect with Grogu in any meaningful way. But now that's not being carried into that isn't the case here anymore. Now it is just Grogu's just going to be a Mandalorian now. He's going to become an apprentice. Yeah, cool. And that's just what they're doing. And they have not done anything meaningful with the story thread that they clearly set up in season 2. And maybe that problem would have been solved with Grogu being gone, but Grogu is here. And they have not done it. They've not done anything meaningful with it. And there's nothing in the text to tell me that they have any interest in doing that.
Brandon, that is 100% right. The Mandalorian episode 1 shows us Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. He's a hard-edged bounty hunter, never takes his helmet off. He has no connections with people, right? He meets his baby. He becomes his dad. That's the arc of the show, right? He finally removes his helmet. It's a big, huge moment, right? Like I'm going to do what I need to do for this baby. Now that's all resolved. His arc is resolved. The arc is now not about Din Djarin anymore, but he is in the show, so he has to be in the show. I just don't know what you can do now. The Grogu thing really have to show up really hard. It really did. Now they have to focus on something else because the big story is done.
But there's a world that Sparkz Sparkz is kind of talking about. Like there's a world where you do that, where you do make it still meaningful that Din is still following the way, but Grogu is there. And they're having trouble. They're struggling to connect in any sort of meaningful way because as Sparkz said, Grogu already said no to being a Jedi because it was going to take away from Din, and he wanted that connection with Din. So now he is back to doing this cult-like behavior, but that no one is addressing the fact that it's basically doing the same thing. It's just this time Grogu is just kind of an accessory, not necessarily a character. And that's that really sucks. Like, frankly, that just sucks.
He does feel more like an accessory this season, and it's just an unfortunate, just a bummer. Because like again, like I think a lot of people come to the show again, like the Casey Casual. I think they do come here for Grogu and stuff, right? And like not the thing that they're not enjoying all this Mandalorian stuff, but like the season ain't hitting the way it used to, and Din and Grogu are part of that reason.
Yeah,
like for sure.
You were about to say something.
The most optimistic side of me wants to believe that like what we're seeing is heading towards a rift. Like while Din and like all this stuff is moving in a relatively, according to Din, according to the armor, even to Bo, positive direction for the Mandalorians, that this is going to run the conflict of like, is this really the way that we should do this? And that part of that is the way that they send Bo-Katan out to recruit the others. Part of that is this conflict that I can see on the horizon of like Bo-Katan's recommitment to this belief system and becoming this leader, and like where that fits in the armorer's trajectory for everything, and like all of this. I do think like this is the most optimistic read for me, is that like, yes, Din is pushing this forward, that he believes like I'm at home, Grogu's with me, this is, we're in it, we're in the belief system, this is how it works, we follow the creed, and we are pushing towards the better future of Mandalore, and that's going to take off, and then Din's going to go, I think maybe not, based on things that will happen down the road by having set this up and push this, and like even his own responsibility in it, and like Grogu's reaction to it. I don't disagree that I think those feelings from Grogu should have been already front and center, because of the fact of the way he left Luke and what we're putting him in the midst of now, that like Din won't take his helmet off again and all this kind of stuff. It's not there, and it should be there, but I have to imagine that we are still heading in a trajectory where like this conflict of what is the way to different Mandalorians is still going to come about.
I don't know. They just announced that Filoni's doing a big movie to tie all these things together. So I don't think we have. I think they're getting the Mandalorians together.
We don't need to talk about that today. But I have a lot of thoughts on that.
It is leading into something sooner rather than later, is what I mean.
One of the things that I think is one of the things that hurts this episode for me is that I don't understand what the armorer said to Bo. Like, that's quite honestly, I don't get it.
Yes, that's what I was talking to him about, that I kind of disagreed with him on. So like, she sends Bo on this mission. You can take your helmet off and go recruit Mandalorians. I'm okay now with people removing their helmets. Right? That's what I assume.
But she also says it's time for all Mandalorians to walk the way.
And I think this is why I'm so confused by the scene, because I thought it was implying that the armor is now, the new way is whatever the Mandalorian wants it to be, helmet or without helmet. You can be the off helmet, I could be the on helmet. We are joining all Mandalorians together. That's what I thought she was saying. But everybody doesn't seem to know what she's saying. And
so what's so strange about that moment, I'm really glad you're kind of on the same page as me on here, is because like, I don't buy that from the armorer. Because the armorer hasn't really had any sort of viable character arc for me to believe that she would change her way. She would change the way. When Bo took off the helmet, I was like, she's tricking you. She's tricking you.
It has to be that. It has to be that. Otherwise, like, what are we doing? Go ahead, Ben.
I have a feeling that she's essentially saying Bo-Katan out as to to unite all of Mandalore, but also to secretly get people to convert back to the way. She's a secret missionary. When she tells Paz that, she walks both worlds, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. She's where people know her face and yada yada yada. But the more I think about it, it's like, this is like, I agree, because just like Brandon, when she first said remove your helmet, I'm like, are you seriously gonna make her go back to Mandalore just for funsies to bathe in the living waters? Like, what is going on? She's like, oh no, you walk both worlds. It's time to reunite everyone else. Was like, oh, you secret missionary. Okay.
Now again, Bo-Katan is coming back to an older belief system for herself as well. So I don't think that the armor's necessarily tricking Bo. I think both of them are tricking the others. and that this is potentially Bo bringing, like when we see episode 6 and she gets all these Mandalorians to come back, Bo will lead them to the living waters of Mandalore and say, we have to follow the way. So get in here, and they'll have to do it because she has the saber now.
So we're gonna have an entire episode where we're getting all the Mandalorians. All right, cool. Let's all take a trek to Mandalore. We're gonna watch another scene of people taking a bath.
I mean, you don't need to watch that. You can just say that shit happened.
That's
in between.
We all went to a bath together, and we it's like.
Well, what do you want? Do you want to watch it or do you not want to watch it?
I don't want that scene to happen. Is what I'm saying at all. Is what I'm saying. I don't want.
It's kind of.
This is the thing, right? Like, this is the thing. If all the Mandalorians are going to come together, like, it was either going to be, what were we going to do? Were we going to do a civil war directly out now between these two groups, or were they all going to get unified and then have it be like, ooh, this is not rubbing everybody the right way, kind of thing?
I just thought all the Mandalorians when they get together, and it was going to be like we were just. It was going to be a united. Any belief system is a cool all unity kind of thing.
I think the thing that I'm rubbing up against, and I can totally see the read that Ben and Sparkz have talked about. I can see how it could be read that way, but taking the scene at face value, because quite frankly, I don't think Jon Favreau is capable of nuance at this point in his career. Is the thing of like it's presented like the armorer believes that now. That all Mandalorians should come together. It doesn't matter if you got your helmet on or off, because Bo-Katan can walk both, and it's presented in that way. And for me, again, because of my unoptimistic interest in Jon Favreau's writing style, I just don't see how it can be read in any sort of nuanced way, because it's just like it just feels like, again, that they have forgotten that the Watch was meant to and set up as a cult, and the armor as a cult leader, and now we're just kind of okay with the cult, we're just going to be neighbors with the cult now.
So is like, because like there was speculation at the beginning of the season, like always like the armor going to be like the secret villain at the end, and I'm like, if that's what we're leading to, and this is all the buildup we've had, that is wholly unsatisfying to me.
Yeah.
Unless the next 2 episodes really give me more.
But going from even Book of Boba Fett, where we leave the armorer in Book of Boba Fett, like, yeah, okay, I can totally see the direction where the armorer becomes a villain. Yes, 100%. The armorer becomes the villain of the whole Mandalorian series. Cool. But it doesn't feel like they're doing that anymore. It really just feels like they've just kind of taken a 180 and being like, actually, Mandalorians are cool now.
Yeah, and again, then. And I'd rather like the Ben Sparkz point of like, she's tricking them. I want that one to be true. But then again, I think again, all the execution, I was like, it didn't sell me on that. That's what you were doing.
Yeah.
And again, that's the better story thing of like, I want conflict. Like conflict is more fun than just everybody getting together.
Well, and because like, I think, bringing this back to the core point, I do think ultimately that Din's not going to agree with it in the long run. Like, what is going to happen with the group? I don't think Din's going to want to follow it. And ultimately, like, long term, right, we're leading to Grogu deciding what is the best way for not only the Mandalorian, but possibly for the Jedi. And like,
but that is literally like in hundreds of years.
Yes, it is. But if this is the foundation of it, this is him being encountered by both of these different, like, very firm ideologies and saying like neither one of these are necessarily correct, and they're too stringent and they're too restrictive and they're too either baked in departing from attachment or emotionally separating from a person, and like, you can build that foundation here. And I think the only person that it matters going forward, if this is what happens and they all get unified and they all start following the creed and say, this is the way, which is the one defining thing that makes me still think this is where we're heading, because I don't think you can have the armorer say, yes, both people can do whatever they want, but this is the way. That is a pretty firm statement that we are still saying in this season. So I'm pretty sure that the armorer is still going to say, all of us have to walk the way together, which is what she said very pointedly to Bo-Katan before she lets her go out without her helmet on. I think it's a trick. I'll be sad if I'm wrong. I will. But like, I want to believe that that's what it is that it's supposed to get everybody on board and on program on one specific way so that they are all doing it together. And that after a moment of time, Din is going to be the person who's like, ooh, I don't agree. And
I just don't think I don't think Bo should have removed her helmet then, because this is what's doing all the confusion. That she walks out without her helmet. She walks in both worlds. That's where, because again, like, half this podcast is divided. So is the internet. Clearly, it is not clear what the author's intent was on this one. Because
And-
there's so many different opinions on it.
Well, and part
Go ahead.
of that to me is that like I do think it's supposed to be a reveal later to us, the audience. If it is a
guess.
trick, I think it is supposed to be a reveal of a trick.
Okay. Yeah.
If Bo-Katan is in on it or not is supposed to be a reveal. I don't think we're supposed to know right now if that's the case.
Oh, I didn't even think Bo would be.
If Bo-Katan and the armor had a conversation, which is like, I want you to go and recruit all these people. You need to go with your helmet off, because if you go with your helmet on and you're doing all these things, they are going to think you're part of the cult. You need to go back to them as they knew you, get them on board, bring them here, tell them this is the way.
Wouldn't that piss them all off that they all got tricked then?
Not if she has the Darksaber now.
But then that just feels gross then. That feels gross. Tricking all your people, instead of leading them like honorably.
But here's the thing. That's who Bo was when we meet her in Clone Wars.
Sure.
That is who she was. She was more like this person that I'm talking about. And so if we are doing a full circle back to where she started in her belief system, that's what she was willing to do.
Maybe I just want better for her, I guess.
Yes, I do too. I think it's tragic. I
don't think it's tragic in a good way. Like, I think they're just making it tragic instead of it like Yellow Jackets is tragic. Like, I don't feel like this. I feel like this is like manufactured. Like,
there's a sense of I don't wholly disagree with what you're saying, Sparkz. And I think there's a sense of like the what they're doing right now. If this is tragic, it's not in a compelling way. It's not in the way that I find myself interested in watching. And if this is for Din to kind of eventually be like, you know what, this is not the way. F the way. Din as a character has become such a wet blanket that I really don't care that he does that.
In enough dealing with this stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but they also don't really focus on Din or Bo in any sort of meaningful way in this season, and that for either direction for that to take, I don't know if I really care.
Look, I'll put it this way. There's really just no version I see unless they're absolutely just brain dead stupid over there. And they might be. Maybe I'm, they might just be brain dead stupid at this point. There's honestly no version I see where this just ends up with all the Mandalorians coming together going, kumbaya, we're all content and under the way now.
I really hope not.
I don't think that's how it's going to go.
The end of this episode felt
I think that part of the point is like Bo-Katan being convinced back into this state of being and belief system and who she used to be, and that becoming a weapon in the armorer's toolbox to get all the Mandalorians to do what she wants them to do, what she believes is the creed. And that I think is part of where we're heading. I do not think this is all just
Bo is going to be the villain like I originally thought it was going to be then. If she's tricking all of her people to believe in her and to follow her, that sucks for her. Yeah, she sucks. Bo kind of sucks. That's compelling, though, I guess.
I had to. It's one of those things that I just gotta wait to see how this plays out in the season, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Don't you hate that? And usually, most of the time, it doesn't end well when we say that. Isn't that funny how that always happens?
No, there is something in this episode that I do want to talk about very positively. And I've been very negative about this episode, and I want, which is the stuff on Coruscant, and the stuff that deals with Teva.
Oh. Okay.
Carson Teva.
No, I was about to say it if you didn't. So, I mean, we've avoided a big Rebels elephant in the room.
I want to talk about the thing I liked first.
Oh my God, you didn't like Zeb?
Oh no.
Effing hated it. Hated it. I was furious. I was like, you did that? You did that? Sorry. I don't want to. I want to keep my emotions in check today. I'm trying a new thing. It's called Zen.
Yeah.
No, it's called Zen.
Okay, I'll quickly just touch on it in a calm, rational manner. It is there for you to do the Leo DiCaprio meme, and I did not appreciate it.
I did a Leo DiCaprio meme.
That's just, yeah.
No, yeah, because I was like, oh shit, I know that guy. That's he's from the Rebels.
That kind of fan service is not working for me anymore, and that is all it is.
I respect that. I loved it. And I'll be honest, I loved it because I never thought we'd get Zeb in live action.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be too complicated and they were going to kill him. They were going to kill him off before we got to this point.
And
he died in the war.
He looked really good.
And that's what we were going to be told. So to know he's alive, that he's out there, and he looked incredible, I was like, cool.
They got the blue meter.
Oh no, you misunderstand. I am happy about that as well. I think that he looks good. It's great that it's Steve Bloom. And I'm great. It's really great that the character is around in the galaxy, and that's wonderful. Using the character in that scene is a complete waste, and it didn't need to be Zeb at all. And it was just there to do the pointy meme, and I was not happy.
That's fair.
And it just goes back to that. For me, I'm an easy mark for fan service. I have been in the past. I love a good fan service. I love a good Leo meme pointing at the thing. And I think I'm just not that person anymore. If you're going to do something like that, I want it to be meaningful. I talked about it on the Real Score, honestly, earlier today when we did our discussion. I am really positive on this season of Star Trek Picard. I'm really happy with this season of Star Trek Picard. But when we were at, quote, to use an example of music, when we were at the Fleet Museum this season, and we saw the Defiant, and we saw Kirk's Enterprise, and we saw Voyager, and that makes sense because you're in the Fleet Museum, and you're going to see those ships there. And 7 of 9 is on the bridge, so she's going to look at Voyager. But the music plays. The theme song from Voyager plays. The theme song from Deep Space Nine plays. The theme song from the original series plays. When you see those ships, and it's not done with any thought. It's just there to be like, hey, you're seeing the thing, so now you hear the thing. And there's no meaningful relationship between what's being seen on screen and the music being played over it. It is just there to have you do that pointy meme. And I just don't think I'm here for that anymore.
I get you. Yeah, it's not a. I do agree that it is like you can literally cut that scene and it adds nothing to like the plot or anything. But it is just like one of the. It is. It was just nice.
It could have been anyone.
He looked pretty good. I'm like, oh look, he's in the rebellion. That's cool.
I mean, it could have been anyone. It could have been random no name 257, but for whatever reason, it's just the fan service of it just didn't work for me.
I get you.
But I want to talk about something I like, please.
No.
Unless you guys want to talk more about Zeb.
No, we talked it longer than he was in the episode, so you're fine.
That's true. I really like Carson Teva. I think he's a fun character, and I like that. And I like that we get more of him in this episode. I really like how they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to call Coruscant. It's like, well, Coruscant hasn't actually talked to us in a while. Okay, well, I'm going to go. And that kind of bureaucracy of what's happening to the New Republic, that kind of being caught in this like, oh, in episode 3, these requisition orders are, we keep trying to destroy everything Imperial. We don't have the resources to do this. We don't really have a standing military, blah, blah, blah. And Carson Teva accurately assumes that there is something more going on out in the galaxy that the New Republic is ignorant to. And we know they are ignorant to it because that's what leads to the First Order eventually taking them over. Just coming in and being like, surprise, bitches. And I really like that scene. And I really like the girl who comes back from episode 3 to be like, oh yeah, I've been there. They didn't sign the Republic Charter. That's too bad. I can't believe we did. And the guy's like, oh man, they didn't. So, we really got to focus on the ones that did. I'm sorry. That kind of like bureaucratic kind of like political thing that's going on. Like I really like seeing that side of the Republic. Seeing we're already seeing the downfall of the Republic, and quite frankly, I find that fascinating.
Seeing how bad they are at their jobs.
Yeah, and because they're going from an unorganized rebellion or an organized rebellion, but like going from rebellion to democracy is such a different thing. And so many rebels now have this job and high paying positions where they're just kind of like trying to make it up as they go and trying to do what they can to protect the people. And what's also really interesting is that at this point in the galaxy, the New Republic was never as strong as the Old Republic. It was never half the systems didn't join the New Republic when the Empire fell because they were like, we did this already. We're good. Yeah. Which again leads to the First Order being able to take over really easily. And so we're seeing that kind of like, we saw that in episode 1 when we meet Grief Karga, and he's like, yeah, we're not going to side with the New Republic. We're going to be an independent system. Many systems did that, and that really weakened the New Republic. And that's what we're seeing here. I don't know. There was a lot of juiciness in that scene where I was just, and the girl's smarminess. Like I really dug it. I was really invested in that bit of the episode.
Yeah, I love Tim Meadows. He's always funny. From Walk Hard, he'll like, you don't want it. I think I kind of want it.
The principal from Mean Girls.
The principal from Mean Girls.
That's no good.
Yeah, that's no good. A great scene. Again, like every time we see the New Republic, they're just really terrible at their jobs. They will, we're gonna do whatever the Empire didn't do, and we're gonna be worse at it. Like not even trying, not even really caring. Like, man, hands are tied, can't do nothing. Sorry.
And the thing is, like, we know this from Force Awakens, that when like some ancillary material from the Force Awakens, not necessarily the movie itself, but like there was a sense that they were willfully ignoring the First Order, or what we know as the Remnant Empire, which would become.
It's not there.
Yeah, they just kind of were like, because as the First Order were creating weapons and militaries, they were just kind of like, they're fine. They're not gonna touch us. We're the Republic. They're the Empire. They're the First Order. Whatever. The Republic knew about the First Order, but they didn't quite know how strong they were getting, because they were, and that's where Leia came in, right? That's where Leia was like, actually, this is a problem, and we need to go in, and which is why Leia's resistance was formed within the First Order space. And I don't know. I just kind of like seeing that thread build. I find that fascinating and so interesting. I just, like I said, I found it compelling.
Yeah, it's very well done. I like that stuff. I want more of it.
But it goes back to the thing of like, this is probably material that the Rangers of the New Republic show would have dealt with, if that show had ever happened. And I do wonder if we probably still needed that show. Maybe they should have tried to rework it into something new, with a different character as the center focus. So that we still have, so we can separate the Mandalorian stuff from what's going on with the New Republic, so they're not so intrinsically tied. But if it had to be anywhere, I'm still happy we're getting it.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, should I move on to episode 6?
I think a lot of like the stuff on Coruscant is, you have to imagine that most of the people in like Tim Meadows' position are not rebellion. Right.
Yeah.
They weren't Empire, but they're not rebellion. They're just the guys that were working on Coruscant, because there were a lot of people. There had to have been, right? There had to have been a lot of people that were working in the system that were not necessarily Imperial, because there's not enough people walking around with amnesty pins for that to be true.
Lloyd.
And like, Coruscant clearly didn't just like shut down. So not enough people who were strictly working for the Empire, but like still probably working in the same kind of jobs as Tim Meadows is. And so like you're still getting like this sense of what the rich people gave us in episode 3 of like, the regime changed, but like, whatever, we're still just kind of in the position and keeping things going. So like, it's the same mentality that really gets back to, and I think the next episode also hints at it, which is really just like the center of the galaxy never gave enough of a shit about the Outer Rim. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the problem in the Old Republic. That's the problem in the New Republic. Like that's the problem before the fall of the Jedi. This is the problem during the Empire. Like nobody gave enough of a shit about the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
Space is too big.
Like whether it's an Andor, right, when he's a kid, and that was still before the Empire, and like nobody gave enough of a shit about that planet. Or you get to the Empire, and then like the Empire committed a lot of atrocities in the Outer Rim. You go back to episode 1, you've got them visiting like the huts on Tatooine, and like slavery is still here. What? That's ridiculous. How can that be? You're just, again, like going back to our best conversations about the Mandalorian of like showing Outer Rim stuff, like not giving enough of a shit about the Outer Rim. And I really like having Grief, Karga, and Navarro centered in that conversation of like, it's very important for us to maintain our independence and not sign up with the New Republic, because when we sign up with the New Republic, like that puts us under their thumb in a way that hasn't been good in the history of the Outer Rim. Like it's at the point where like, we now know that we're finally getting something that goes beyond the First Order time period in Star Wars. And when we eventually get to that storytelling, I really do hope that the point is like the center body of government in the universe just frankly shouldn't have anything to do with the bodies of government of the Outer Rim. And there should be more individualized systems of governing that can connect, but do not necessarily follow under the same system and rules. Because while apparently, to my eyes anyway, when I watch most of Star Wars, it's not that hard to take transportation from Coruscant out to the Outer Rim planets. It doesn't take a lot to do so. You get there pretty quickly, at least to my eyes. it's still too far for them to give enough of a shit.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think it is valuable, just to your point, Brandon, and echoing it, that like that's why I like having a scene like this. I really do like it, and I'm glad it's here because it feels necessary when you've tied yourself into the knot of like, well, the First Order had to happen. We basically had to get the Empire 2.0. Well, how could that have possibly happened? Shouldn't people have been like kind of against it? And it's like, bureaucracy and people not giving enough of a shit ever.
The Empire couldn't happen again. No way. Just ignore the fascists in the corner of space. There's no way they have a giant super weapon that's going to destroy 5 planets at once.
I truly, truly hope that like getting past the First Order, like they finally recognize that like maybe we do need to like recognize that stuff going on in the Outer Rim is something we should care about in a way where like we functionally are aware of it, so that 5 of our center planets don't get blown up.
Bro, that's the next phase, is outer expansion.
What was the I think the First Order came from the unknown regions.
Yeah.
And Thrawn is currently in the unknown regions.
Oh, bro, we will talk so much when we talk about Ahsoka straight. Like, don't worry.
Stay tuned for our. So that's probably already out, actually.
It'll be an hour long.
I'm jumping ahead, but I'm taking us into episode 6. Like, I think that between this episode, right, and then you get to episode 6, and you have Christopher Lloyd's character saying like the Separatists were right, Count Dooku was right, and like fundamentally, there are people within the Separatists and ways that they did certain things that I don't agree with, but like in a general sense, what the Separatists were fighting for is for equal rights of the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
That is where that foundation starts of like what they're asking for, and they weren't wrong. Like there was a problem happening there. That's why their separatist movement got so important and big. And I really like that kind of coming full circle.
That's what
Christopher Lloyd's character.
That's what Forrest Whitaker.
Saw
Gerrera. That's what he was fighting for when we first meet him, and because he's a separatist when we first meet him.
Right.
Clone Wars.
Anyway, yeah, like that show.
Ben, any other thoughts on episode 5 before we fully move into episode 6?
Nah.
Ben's like, nah, I'm not getting involved.
Episode 6.
Let's go to Pleasure 15, everybody.
The most Clone Wars-y live action episode I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who and Star Wars.
I really like, because you said that, I'm just going to say one thing I really liked about it, which is seeing live action, tactile, real battle droids for the first time. Because they've always been CGI and they were always CGI in the prequels, and then they had then obviously they were animated for like decades. So that was kind of cool seeing just like, articulate, moving, real battle droids. It was kind of like seeing the clone troopers for the first time in live action. They were actually tactile, real, with armor, and
we saw a battle droid run for the first time. Why didn't they always run like that? They probably would have won the war.
The super battle droids, we saw them run.
Did we?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember ever seeing a big.
No, I don't think we've ever seen
that big boy. He ran like a human being.
Maybe in Clone Wars. Maybe I'm forgetting Clone Wars, but certainly not in the movies. Like we've seen them like maybe mildly like kind of shuffle quickly.
So real quick, that scene was entirely inspired by Blade Runner. That dude was booking it for a droid.
For a super battle droid, that dude was hustling.
Yeah.
I've seen people like share the memes of like playing Battlefront 2 and the super battle droid moves at the speed it does in that Mando episode. Screaming.
Maybe I'm thinking about Lego games. You could run as a super battle droid in the Lego games.
Sure.
Probably.
I won't say that it's never happened. I'm not that confident, but like I really feel like we never really saw it in the movie.
It just threw me off. I'm like, damn, that guy's booking it. Like
that guy was moving.
He's like full tilt hustling. Like
we'll get to Din Djarin's racism.
Real quick, I'd like to, just because we're talking about droids. This is just an anecdote I wanted to share. So there's this guy named Pedge. Who was from the UK Droid Builders Club. And he created his own accurate C-3PO costume that he designed entirely of his own. And this was seen by Chris Bartlett, who was one of the droid actors on The Mandalorian. And Pedge had passed away already. And they brought this is the blue C-3PO protocol droid. They brought that droid is a tribute to this person who was part of the Droid Builders Club in the UK.
That's really cool.
Of like an homage to this person that passed. I just thought that was cool because that was a very unique design. And it came from this person that they were just homaging in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
This was such a video game ass episode. I mean, every episode of The Mandalorian is video gamey, but like they arrive on this planet. Why did I already forget? Why did they arrive on this planet in the first place?
They're here to get they're here to get the other Mandalorians, Bo-Katan's.
That's right.
Mandalorians.
That's right. They can't just go talk to them. They have to go land and talk to Jack Black and the Duchess before they can just go talk to them.
We have to talk about Wet Romeo and Juliet.
Oh God, yes!
At the beginning of the episode.
Thank God this happened.
That was
I really love.
That was out of left field.
That captain's chair with the tube for
the water
and then it descending.
And then she
Super
sits
cool.
in the chair. Dude, that's like one of the sickest captain chair things I've ever seen in my life. Hella cool.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
I
sweet.
like that a lot.
When her face tentacles are like caressing the face of the Mon Calamari prince, I'm
I love
just
it.
like, I mean, yay, fish love, I guess.
It was really charming. I was kind of just like, I just want this to be the whole episode. But then we got like still lots more funny nonsense things. So I'm like, this is the whole vibe of the episode. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
While this episode's not my favorite of the bunch, I really had a fun time with this episode.
I quite enjoyed this episode. I thought it was very fun. It's funny. There's one thing they don't do that quite frustrates me, but we will get into it.
I really like that opening. I like that we see Bo-Katan's former crewmates running with Gideon's ship.
That's right.
I'm glad that that's a present part of what we're doing. I think that really works. It's nice to see them again. I just thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Tom Holland's baby brother, Harry Holland.
Oh, yes.
He had a scene cut from Spider-Man, and now he got redemption by being in Star Wars.
Well, Jon Favreau probably met him on the set of Spider-Man.
That's
true.
That's not very true. Yeah.
So Bryce Dallas Howard directed this one. I find there's a lot to really like in this episode, and if you're like a prequelist like me, there's very much like there is a hardcore like this is something straight out of, as Sparkz said, the Clone Wars. Feels very, very lavish and very big, very kind of this bright prequel aesthetic that I was really enjoyed being in.
Not our first Duchess. I was really hoping.
It's been 40 years since Duchess Satine died.
Yeah, I know, but like it's just nice hearing Duchess, and I'm like, somebody bring it up. Somebody say something.
Okay. I think I'm gonna just real quick interject in broad strokes this we have got 3 giant cameos. There's a lot of cameos in this episode, but there are 3 very prominent and giant ones, and I'm gonna grade them real quick. Christopher Lloyd, top tier, excellent, fit in perfectly. Jack Black, pretty good, could have been better, solid. I love Lizzo. I don't blame her. I think they gave her the clunkiest dialogue.
She's not an actor.
That did not help her at all.
She also was doing space British, where like she was British like every 4th line.
And like giving her complicated planets and other words and like the most cheesy like, and as for you two, the key to blah blah, and I'm like, ooh, give her better lines. These were not lines that were catering to her capability.
I think overall, I think this episode, I like the stuff that happened, but I think the writing of this episode was fairly weak overall. A lot of fun things happening, but like yeah, specifically, I'm like, I'm enjoying just Jack Black be silly with his waxed beard, but I'm like, man, like 8 episodes in this season, y'all.
I think time is more wasted in other places, and so it gets a little like, this is what we're doing here, but like
I enjoy
don't blame this episode.
No, I don't.
No,
I have she's playing space bocce ball, and I'm like, 8 episodes.
This is the one where I really felt like it's not like I didn't feel it up until this point, but this is the one where I felt like, oh, Grogu is just useless.
Sure.
Yeah,
Grogu is just absolutely useless in the season.
Not to hang out with Din for this whole episode, you know.
I will say I like that like the planet is kind of supposed to be a what if Mandalore had prospered, right? There's a similarity in their dome cities, and there's a structural idea of like them kind of seeing, at least especially for Bo-Katan, like a version of a better living that they just didn't have the opportunity to pursue.
Well, it's because they have slave droids.
In the same way.
Because they all have slave droids.
Right. They like it. They like being slaves.
Bro, the politics in this episode suck, and we'll get into it.
Why don't we? Because we've been dancing around it 3 times now.
Let's talk about good stuff first.
But real fast, one of the most valuable things I think is this, again, pushing this idea of Din visualizing what that future for Mandalore can be, what can be the best version of it, and them saying like, will nominate you to be recognized in the independent star system. Like you will taking the Mandalorians into the spotlight and making you
this is a weird
part of the prominent.
This is a weird line. This is a weird line. Because Jack Black just like says it out of nowhere. Like he knows that like, oh, you guys are rebuilding Mandalore. We will get you into the system. We will get you into the New Republic. Like, okay, Jack Black, we just met you throwing all this like.
Well, he says it. He says it because, in fairness, he says it because the other Mandalorians told him that they split from Bo-Katan, who was trying to rebuild Mandalore.
Okay, no, fair. That's totally fair. Then that's totally fine with me. Cool.
Right.
Love
and
it.
Din's seeing this as another like step in like building up the prosperous future of Mandalore.
Yeah.
Once again, and like that as a goalpost, I just like that coming back around. Like there's another strong goalpost in the steps of like reestablishing Mandalore that's clearly present here and given the drive.
It is, again, I just think it's funny that like Bo couldn't just go talk to these people. We had to go do a funny side quest and play bocce ball before they got permission to talk to her old friends. I just thought that was like, it's all fun. Yeah, the droid looked great. Seeing a droid bar called the Resistor.
I like that.
I thought we were about to do some solo shit. Yo, the Resistor, are these guys like, are we doing some like cool Andor shit? No, they're slaves who like being slaves. Why are we doing this? What are we doing?
So I don't like it. I don't like it. I
understand this. What they're trying to do. The wording of it was saying we're slaves and we like being slaves.
I like that this planet is considered a refuge because anywhere else their technology is outdated and they would be decommissioned into scrap, especially the Imperials. Like if they were found, they would just be torn apart and shut down. So like there is like a double-handed sword here, right? Of like
just take that line out.
We're acknowledging their sentience. And it's not necessarily that they say like, you know, they consider it repaying a favor of being given an opportunity to live somewhere.
Sure.
Like rather than, you know, it's like at best like a bartering system. And like the thing is, yes, they work so that humans don't have to. That's true. They also clearly have more freedom and liberty on this planet than they do anywhere else in the system because they have a droid bar, which we know has never been anywhere else. And droids have not been allowed in bars and all this kind of stuff. So like there is an amount of like respecting their sentience that exists here, but it's clunky. I'm not going to say it's well handled, but like there's an acknowledgement of like you have value and you are your own identity and we don't want you to be torn apart and decommissioned, so come here, you can work for a living and here you go.
Again, it's the writing of it. Like everything you were saying is right, and even as they're saying it, I'm like, I know what you're trying to say, but the words coming out of your mouth are bad.
Right.
But
so Star Wars has been, we've talked about it, frankly, with almost every Star Wars movie we've reviewed. Star Wars has constantly run up against the line of where are we at with droid sentience? Like Solo is the biggest one that we talk about a lot, where it's clearly they looked upon as droids are a slave force and droid rebellion and whatnot. They have souls, and Mandalorian I think has rubbed up against it a few times now. This one being the most egregious, and they never crossed that line because I don't think anyone's quite willing to do anything with that.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna need them to stop going up against that line if they ain't gonna do anything with it.
So here's the thing I will say. I think what Star Wars does best about this is they treat it just as messy as we would treat identity politics in our world, because it's not like there aren't characters on both sides of the discussion, right? Prominently, Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin sees R2-D2 as a being, and Obi-Wan does not.
Yeah.
This is very clearly and plainly existent in the text. There are plenty of other examples you can go through where like one character looks at droids as just simply tools or servants or anything like that, and others look at them as connectable living beings.
Yeah.
You can go back to the Kenobi show where we had that defender droid that helped like them escape for the path that was fighting against the stormtroopers. You can go to all kinds of examples where like there are people who believe that that droids have the sentience and people that don't.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I really appreciate is that like it isn't a unified belief system. This is a sticky subject that the characters are actively engaging with and have different opinions on all throughout the timeline of Star Wars, because nobody has weighed in on a consensus that just decided one way is true or not.
Here's my problem with it. Din Djarin, I thought, I'm not going to say he was completely cured of his robot racism after his stuff with IG-88, right? Or IG-11, I would never remember. But like, I thought it simmered. I thought it simmered enough because at the beginning of the season, he went to go get that droid, which is a plot point that we're never going to return to, right? So my thing is, he is so racist in this. He is pushing droids nonstop. He is constantly saying you can't trust them. And like, we're doing this in season 3. You want our main protagonist to be like, I'm not saying you are right. Like, we have had characters do that, but I thought we were past this. You want to reinforce that he's still racist against robots? Why? Why? I don't think that's a fun character trait to have. The way Obi-Wan does it, he's like joking. Din Djarin's an asshole to droids, like, actually. And I don't find that endearing or fun.
So, sorry, Sparkz, if I may bounce off of that.
Bounce it.
The thing that kind of bugs me about about the example that Ryan is speaking towards, when Din is kicking the super battle droids, and he's waving his arm around them and he starts kicking them, and then one of them does malfunction and run away. I took that, and this is my own. I'm willing to admit that this is my own expectations of what this episode was setting up. I took that as that droid was trying to protect his life.
Yes.
I took that as he was running for his life so that this man doesn't kill him, because he is a slave. And so like I that to me set up a completely different episode. And I'm willing to just put it all out there. That was my own expectations, and I probably let myself down.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't help but feel that moment was to telegraph, like, I said at that moment, I was like, oh, I don't think they're malfunctioning. I think they're revolting. Yeah. I think they don't like being slaves, but then they like being slaves.
Happens. Yeah, and then the hell gets up after, like, where they're being like nanomachined through their like oil drinks and stuff, which is silly.
And this is an episode. I want to be clear, like, this is an episode I like, and I always like it. I always like it when Star Wars goes up against this line of droids thing. Like, quite frankly, I do really like the discussion around whether droids have sentience or not. Yeah. This was the one that kind of crossed the line, and not in a good way for me. But all in all, I do think it's a pretty fun episode. I just kind of want to have that blanket thing over this.
No, yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. Yeah.
So I think they go too hard on it, but I do think like it's logical for Din's racism towards droids to rear up in this episode, because it's specifically the battle droids that killed his parents. Sure. It's specifically the battle droids that attack, like that it is the foundation of why he has a problem with droids. So his distrust and issue with them, I'm not saying they didn't take it too far, but
they shot and destroyed, like killed one on chasing. There was one just standing there that either him or Bo just shoot down. And I'm like, they just killed that droid. They just shot that droid and nobody cares about it. Like, if we're supposed to like, it's just like messy. They're not thinking too much about it, and we're thinking too hard about it, and that's the unfortunate problem here.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you.
No, it's fine. That really was it. It's just like I get why like the resurgence of his issues comes about, because it is specifically these droids, and these are the droids he's treating really badly, like directly, is because like it's these droids specifically. I do think they take it too far, but like, and I do think like there's too much of the script from Favreau leading into, I wanted to make a classic detective LA Law and Order episode. Yeah, but why would droids need to be in a morgue?
That's silly.
Why do you need to keep a droid body cold?
Yeah, see, that's just comedy right there. That's Bryce Dallas Howard.
Like
funny.
like that kind of stuff. But there's too much of Jon Favreau wanting to create good cop, bad cop, and have Din be the bad cop, and like it just leans too hard into like the tongue in cheek. The idea of the episode and the fun of it and all that is fine. Like, I like the kind of like unique case kind of thing, and like this planet that I can't lie, like I cracked the hell up when they are going through like the droid footage of them malfunctioning, and you get the protocol droid that like just steps inside of the vehicle and drives straight to a wall.
Oh yeah,
and I thought that was so gosh darn funny.
There's the shopper guy, and he's just like, no.
Yeah. Just taking everything out of the bag.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good comedy in that, and And so I think overall, like, the episode ends up very fun. You're right in the sense, like, part of this is that this doesn't want to put a stamp, even if it's just this planet's belief system on sentience and droids. Like, it doesn't make a firm enough case.
Also,
right? That they don't say, like, to us, droids are people.
Yeah.
And while they have taken up the labor and we have become accustomed to them taking up the labor, it has been done in return for providing them this home. And we've kind of, like, as a culture, gotten subsumed away from the idea of separating that from the grossness
and that's
necessarily
why
of it.
Hellgate wants to stop it.
But like, especially
I wish that was text, you know.
Well, but like, it's kind of there, but it's not all there, right? Like, because Hellgate says, like, this is how they've lived for a long time. This is pre the Clone Wars, that droids have been here. Like, people have lived and been born on this planet and died on this planet, not knowing how to take care of themselves, because this has been a planet of luxury and paradise in its own sense, because it has been able to do that, because it has been a refuge for droids for a while, going back into the pre-Clone Wars era Republic. So, like, that is a foundational thing. It could have been better expressed, and it could have been better stated about how the planets recognize droids as their own sentient beings.
He's like a Scooby-Doo villain.
but there's still some, like, interesting concepts at play in that, I think. And I'm overall more entertained to have this idea of this world that's designed this way in Star Wars than to not have seen it at all. I really,
I mean, I'm with you on that one.
Now,
one of these days, I want them to actually tackle this droid thing.
I feel like it's going to be like a big event where, like, it is like, we are firmly doing this. It is going to be a big droid uprising. Like, you know, here's a movie about it. Here's a comic about it. Here's a TV show. You know, like, I think they're saving they have to do a big push. You can't start that with, like, one tiny kernel. You know what I mean?
It feels like in some ways you kind of just can't do it until post Rise of Skywalker, right? Because, like, if it is big enough, like,
it can't happen.
For how people for the universe to literally discuss, like, where do droids fall?
True.
You'd have to have acknowledged it before that, like, you know, and so it has to kind of come post everything at this point.
Yeah.
So maybe one day.
Yeah.
What I will say is, like, one of the most egregious and unforgivable things they allowed to happen on this show is for Jack Black to sing a line or two from Fiddler on the Roof, which is Star Wars' first pop culture reference, and I could not believe that they allowed it to get through, because I'm like, how can you have allowed that to happen?
Unbelievable.
Ridiculous. I can't believe that Star Wars has broken that line, and now there is a pop culture reference inside of Star Wars. Ridiculous.
First ever one.
It's also, she gets a giant key to the city. And I'm like, this episode is just Goof City nonsense.
But I think, like, this planet, because of the way this planet has because of the way this planet has come up, like, I kind of accept that it's goofy as hell, because, like, these are people left to their own devices of luxury at all times. Like, they are not a serious planet, which is one of the reasons why it's very funny that, like, Jack Black, another member of the Amnesty program,
his name's Bombardier,
coming away from the Empire, finds this place so wonderful.
I also, again, another line that I'm like, Lizzo's like, you know, my husband, but he's an ex-Imperial. Everybody's made mistakes in their lives. We all have a chance to be better. And I'm like, that didn't happen that long ago. He's like 50 years old. That's a bad man. That's a bad man.
I do want to go back to how I graded the cameos and say that, like, Christopher Lloyd, I think, fits perfectly in this episode. And I think he's selling every line that he's given. I think he really, like, that, and, like, when he's making his apologies to the Duchess, like, he's bringing complete emotionality to the role, and I'm like, yeah, Christopher Lloyd, you still killing it. Good for you.
I really like Christopher Lloyd in this episode. Quite frankly, he makes the episode for me when he's up there and he's like, "Nobody move!" and he reveals himself to be a separatist. Yeah. I thought that was just really good.
Yeah. I didn't surrender to the Republic. I didn't surrender to the Empire. I won't surrender to you.
The Count Dooku was a visionary who was stricken down by his primes.
Taken down.
Sorry.
No. I was gonna mention that because obviously Bo-Katan fought with Anakin Skywalker. So the second he was gonna say the Jedi Enforcer, she was like, "That's a nerve."
Do you guys ever think about how old Bo-Katan's supposed to be? Because I do a lot.
Isn't she like in her 50s?
She's in her 60s at this point.
Looking good,
right?
Hey man, good. She's Mandalorian, not human. So, you know, like, age can be different.
I guess.
It's true. Boba Fett's younger.
Oh my god, that dude! Yeah, he was also in a Starlight Pit for like 1,000 years or whatever.
That thing aged him like fine wine.
Tatooine fucks you up.
It's true. It's too sandy. It's everywhere.
The droid bit that you guys were talking about, I didn't really notice this, but now that you have talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, that is a little bit problematic. Because ever since I was a kid, I mean, I see droids as machines, as tools to help me get means to an end. But
we've been through this. We know how he feels.
Ben. Oh. Get it.
But that doesn't mean you be a dick to droids either.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, C-3PO, protocol droid, love him to death. R2, love him to death.
I was always with Anakin. I thought Obi-Wan was funny, but I was always no, Anakin's right.
Yeah, like when R4 dies, I'm like, oh no, R4.
Oh man, he doesn't. Man, Obi-Wan doesn't give a shit when R4 dies.
He doesn't. But at the same time, one of the things I did like is how in the resistor, the droid bar, the droid is saying is like, this is a way for us to survive. That because if we go to the New Republic, because we've seen this in episode 3, if we go to the New Republic, anything that has an Imperial sigil on it, gone.
Yeah,
right.
Anything,
and no one would take over. No one. The Republic would even if the battle droids would never be welcome in the New Republic because they're seen as weapons of war.
Yeah. Right. And so to see a bunch of battle droids and to hear the battle droid voice again, it kind of made me chuckle. And even in the bar, one more cameo that I was a big fan of was the Rex droid, the droid from Star Tours.
Yeah, yes. That was cool.
I was always happy to see those droids. But I do get that. I mean, even I was actually kind of taken aback about Din's very racist remarks toward droids, because even then I was like, I thought you were kind of okay with droids. IG-11 sacrificed himself. You let the mechanic lady on Tatooine fix the ship with the droids.
R4, Republic Hero.
Yeah, Republic Hero.
That's
R4.
R5, actually.
R5, sorry, R5, forgive me.
R5, Republic Hero. I mean, mostly my main problem with this episode happens with the end, with the very anticlimactic end, which we definitely touched on earlier in the episode.
Sure, and we'll touch on it again, I'm sure, as the last.
But other than that, I actually enjoyed the mystery of it all. I kind of liked this romp through this planet. I loved Jack Black. Seeing him in this show, and even watching, I do agree. Lizzo's lines were not good. I completely agree. And even I was like, Lizzo. But yeah, Jack, the cameos, I mean, I like cameos, and also I like seeing actors I grew up with, i.e. Christopher Lloyd. I grew up watching his movies, and I'm like, oh my God, Christopher Lloyd's here. Damn, he looks old.
Yeah, 84.
Yeah. But the man is an absolute legend and respected. And he's also in...
Sorry, Ben. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say, it's always cool when you see an actor who also was in Star Trek and Star Wars be able to do both.
That's true. He was in blackface in Star Trek. I forgot about that. Sparkz,
that's the second time Brandon's brought that up today.
Sparkz, you were trying to say something a little earlier.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I also think it's important to recognize in there's different levels to the sentience for droids, right? Because we've seen that there are machines, for example in the factory where they're making the battle droids in episode 2, those machines do not have sentience. Yeah, there are droids in there that are functioning on certain paths, and they don't have the same spark of life that 3PO and R2D2 do. And so there is a line, and to what I can understand and what I think I recall, I would say the super battle droids are generally drone programmed. Their operations don't include soul operations, but regular battle droids do, but not the supers. The supers almost never engage in any kind of personality amount. We hear them talk one time in episode 3, and they say, "What that?" That's not a sentence. I don't believe that they are as complex in their sentience as a lot of our other droids that we encounter. And my only point with that being that, it is interesting how it's just interesting in Star Wars how there are clearly levels of what is sentience and what is not, and that not all droids fall under that umbrella.
My main point overall is why do we need our main character to still be a racist against droids? Like, why? What does that add to his character now, right? And like, besides just like, wow, he still doesn't like droids because obviously they're part of his. Like, I get that, but like, that's not adding anything to what's happening with Mandalore or anything like that. Like, I don't need Din to continually to be racist against robots. For me personally.
So I got a question about R5 real quickly because we brought it up a little earlier. The revealing R5 to be a member of the rebellion confirms the fan theory that R2-D2 told R5 to pretend to malfunction so that R2 could go with Luke, right?
That sounds right.
I don't even think that's a fan theory. I think that's
true.
That's in a certain point of view.
That's the book.
I
Was it
believe
in a
that
certain
is
point of view?
in a certain point of view where it's from R2's perspective and he tells R5 to malfunction for him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true.
Love it.
Very cool.
Um,
Keeping it all together, story group that's probably just one person at this point.
It's so hard. So many stories.
yeah.
So after Hellgate gets captured, sorry, Duchess. And he walks away.
We talked a little bit about the battle already at the end, and I do want to say I think I honestly like the choreography of the battle between Wolf,
Axe.
I don't care about his name honestly, and Bo, because what I appreciate is that they're using their Mandalorian weapons, right? You know, they're throwing at the line, they're using the flamethrower, they're using their jetpacks a lot. They're using, I think that's really clever, and some people would maybe forget that you could utilize all those sort of things in this fight sequence and just kind of have it be hand to hand, and I appreciate that.
Good point.
So that is probably the only real positive I have to say about that fight scene.
I have a positive. There are 3 black Mandalorians in that scene. Hell yeah. I'm just glad there's some more diverse Mandalorians.
That's right.
Present in this show. That's great.
That's good. Good for them.
Yeah.
And I I'm not even sure. I wouldn't be surprised if the scene wasn't filmed on the volume because I think the lighting is very good. It feels very natural in a way that the volume can't really mimic natural daylight. They've talked about it a lot. Like the cinematographer for this show has talked about how it's difficult for the
midday.
volume to what did you say?
Midday.
Yeah, to replicate that midday daylight. And it to me it looked right. It looked like they were standing on a field in daylight, with the sun high. I feel like if it's the volume, I'll be very impressed, quite frankly.
What doesn't work about this for me is the same thing that I said didn't work when we started the season for Bo, which is that she didn't have the darksaber, so everyone just abandoned her. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. This just doesn't make sense. Like, why? A, that Bo would just give up on her purpose in that sense, and like B, why everyone was like, sure, okay, so she didn't challenge Din for the darksaber in that moment. Like, you all just abandoned Bo completely. Like, that just it doesn't track for me, and I don't think there's enough meat on the bones to have justified it, and certainly to have justified why they just decided to follow Axe instead. Unless you are giving me a clear statement of fact that like Axe beat her in combat before, which they don't do. And so I'm like, why are we arbitrarily just abandoning Bo-Katan? I don't buy it, especially from like the other prominent Mandalorian who we saw before with her in that season, actually going with her to get the darksaber, like to get Gideon and all that stuff. Like, why she wouldn't still follow Bo-Katan? I'm like,
she doesn't. Sasha Banks, the wrestler, doesn't have a line.
The arbitrariness of will follow the person with the darksaber, like the fact that they have turned that from like just kind of a general idea to like, this is our core belief, in the same way that like the other ones don't remove their helmets, is like,
so yeah,
okay, I guess
it's I don't remember if it's season 1 or season 2, but Moff Gideon talks about the darksaber. It's about the story of it. The story is more powerful than the weapon itself, right? And when I think of the story of the blade and how it's passed down and where it is now, I'm like, yeah, and then Bo was just given to her by Din because he lost in a cave once. Like that is a terrible way to continue that story.
This is the second time that someone has just handed Bo-Katan the dark
But
saber.
in Rebels, I still found it more impactful in Rebels because at least with Sabine, that felt like it was emotional and like inspired. Where this, I didn't feel that.
And that's actually why I had such a problem with the season 2 finale and Bo-Katan not taking the dark saber. This whole thing of like it needs to be one. It's like, I mean, admittedly, it's been a little while since I've seen Rebels. Maybe there was some sort of fight between Sabine and Bo-Katan that I just don't remember. But as far as I was concerned, like, yeah, you could just give Bo-Katan the saber. Now there is something that is spoken earlier on that is, I think, brought up in the recap of this episode, which is that if you don't win the dark saber in combat, it's cursed.
Yes. I will respond to that real quick. You said that is spoken, and it reminded me that we didn't touch on the Ugnaughts at all in this episode. The come around on Din getting to use understanding how to talk to them, and I have spoken to engage with them. And the main Ugnaught that he talks to is the voice of General Grievous and a sound editor for Lucasfilm. Okay. Oh. Anyway.
Oh, there's also a gross line about how they're like a credit to their species, and I was like, why are we another gross line of the show? It's like stupid. Ugnaughts. They're credit. Like, these guys are a credit to their species. They
didn't say credit to their species because he's saying that the Ugnaughts are known
the hardest working people in the species in the
hardest working species in the universe. Yes.
Yeah, that's gross. That's gross.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
These guys, they're the hardest working blacksmiths. These specific group of people. I don't know. I just found it a little weird, but it doesn't matter. Let's talk about the other one.
Yeah, so the blade is cursed, and that's the thing is like everyone they've mentioned it on Mandalorian before that the armor says it. Like everyone believes that because Bo-Katan was handed the darksaber instead of winning in combat from Sabine, that is why Mandalorian was cursed and fell. They blame her in the same way that Bo-Katan blames the cult to an extent for like ostracizing them and making them weaker. They blame her for taking a curse upon them. All of Mandalore for not winning the darksaber in combat. So while it went fine in the moment, like later on, it's looked back on as that Bo-Katan made the wrong choice and was weak and lost it to Gideon. We still don't know the semantics of how that happened, but she did lose it to Gideon. So it's a big deal that like why she would refuse at the end of season 2 makes sense because she's getting all of this internally brought back of like the last time I did this. What ultimately happened is my people turned on me for it.
Do you think, because we know Gideon's going to probably show up in one of these 2 episodes, at least I assume so. Do you think we see a flashback about that? Or do you think we just never see how Moff Gideon got the darksaber? Because I think that's a pretty important thing to learn, why this Imperial holds the darksaber.
I could see it be done through dialogue. I don't necessarily think it needs to be through a flashback.
No, that's what I mean. Like, are they even going to bring it up? Like, or is it just like, are we just never going to learn how Gideon got the darksaber? Because, like, again, I want to know that.
I think eventually we'll learn, but I'm not going to say it's going to happen in like this season.
I don't know how much longer Gideon's going to be around after this season, though.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't even think it's going to happen in the show. I think it'll happen in like a book or something. I'm being honest. I just don't think so. I don't think we're going to learn how Gideon got the darksaber in the show. I just don't. This is not a show, and Star Wars is not generally a genre that does flashbacks. The only reason we've had them in this show, and this is the only show to do them, is because what we've had is the trauma PTSD flashbacks that have happened, and that's the only time we've done flashbacks. Everything else is like premonitions and dreams.
Obi-Wan had flashbacks.
Obi-Wan Kenobi had flashbacks?
Yeah.
In dreams, right?
Does the Anakin training fight count as a dream when he's fighting?
Is that a dream? I thought that was just a flashback.
You're right. No, you're right.
Don't forget the family joke. Remember that time me and Anakin went to Javin 7 and made some crisscrosses?
The one time that they used flashbacks and they didn't use them well enough. I'm just being honest. Like, I just don't think that's a story we get in this
show.
I think that is something that we get.
I think that's crappy because that's where it's introduced in.
I don't disagree. Yeah. That's generally like how Star Wars canon is handled, and I wouldn't be surprised if
I can't wait to read the comic in 3 years. That'll just be like they had a fight once.
What is the value, I guess, of like of learning the details of that in the show?
I want to know how Bo-Katan lost it to an Imperial. I think that's a cool story to tell.
Right? No, I know. I hear you, but like I guess like how does it inform anything about the moment now?
I don't know.
That's what I mean. It's like, why would it happen in the show now? Because does it reveal anything new about Bo now?
No.
And like, I don't think it does. So that's why I don't think it'll happen in the show. It's a thing I want to know. I do want to know how that happened.
Because I'm just saying, if Gideon sees her with a Darksaber, like, wow, this is just like last time you had it. So I'm sure they're going to talk about it because last time we saw her, she had it. So I'm like, things have changed. I'm just curious. I think, going into characters' histories in the show that they're in is cool. I understand Star Wars is dumb and makes us
I
read
agree.
other things.
I agree. I just
No, I get it.
I don't expect that from the show.
Yeah.
One other thing.
Wouldn't it be nice to expect good things?
One other thing from episode 5 that I forgot to also bring up that I really love is when Tevye goes and looks at the ship that Gideon was being transported on. He asks his droid to go in with a closer look with the drone, and we see the top piece of the astromech dislodge, and it is a little drone camera, and I'm like, that is genius. What a genius use of that design. Loved it. 10 out of 10.
Beskar.
Well thought out. Brilliant.
Somebody stole Gideon. It's Beskar. It's definitely the Mandalorians.
So we talked a lot about. Is there anything else we want to talk about, like with Bo-Katan getting the Darksaber at the end of this episode?
I tackled everything I wanted to tackle.
I just wish it was done better. I knew.
I got one last note then. The droids drink Nepenthe. Nepenthe is the planet where Will Riker and Deanna Troi settle on in Star Trek Picard.
There you go. That's cute.
Just think that's funny.
I wonder if that's like a word, like another word that means something. Because like it's like plaisir 15. It's like pleasure in French.
Oh, I actually do think it means something.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it means like renewal or something.
That sounds right. Yeah, the droids look great. I loved so many good practical droids. That was fun. So what happens next episode, do you think?
Apparently something cool based on Celebration.
Oh, we saw a trailer with characters, and I think one of those characters is showing up. Because it's a full episode that he's writing, that he's story credited to. So I think it might be a Sabine. I think it's a Sabine. Because we're gathering more Mandalorians. You think Boba Fett shows up? You think will he be a Mandalorian?
I don't think Boba Fett shows up this season, but I don't think I do think we see Boba Fett again.
Okay.
I don't know if we do see Sabine actually, because Sabine at this point would still be on
Lothal.
What show is this? What we're talking about?
Mandalorian, because we're not at the end. We're not at the end of Rebels yet. That starts in Ahsoka.
Meh.
All right. Why don't we call it? It's getting late.
It's getting late. It is late.
Any last thoughts you guys want to bring up?
No, please.
I'm joking. That was a joke, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay. I honestly don't know how the last 2 episodes are going to bring up the whole season for me. I really don't. I won't say I was completely bored this whole season. But this season has just, like I said earlier, this season just felt like it was just one big setup. Like essentially, you know what the word I was looking for? This felt like filler season. Like mostly filler with a little tiny bit of story sprinkled in throughout that's leading to a bigger picture. Brandon was talking about how it felt directionless. We were talking about how that there were some really good story beats that just weren't executed properly or executed well in our eyes. And I mean, I did say I liked episode 5 a lot. That was because it was the most action-packed episode that we've had. I do like episode 6 because of the sleuthing, and episode 4 was just there, minus the Ahmed Best bit. Ahmed Best bit was awesome though. Yeah. To be honest, I do feel like this is going to be a very low, like in seasons to come. Should there be more seasons? Let's be real, there probably will be.
They say it's going to be never ending.
Shit.
Yeah.
They also say it'll culminate in the movie.
I don't know how I feel about that. But
what are they?
Okay, real quickly, I'm actually really excited about that prospect. I love the idea of shows culminating in movies. I've loved it since I was a kid, and I'm so excited to get one. But
it's the end of this phase of The Mandalorian.
But we'll talk about that. But we've probably talked about that to death on the Fake Nerd podcast. Go check that out.
Yeah. Where was I going with this? Yeah. I mean, I hope to be proven wrong by episode 8, but we only have 2 episodes left, and there has to be something really big to happen that just goes, okay, yeah, it was worth it getting there. Because right now, doesn't feel like there will be something big, and it doesn't, and I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off.
Can I just kind of I kind of want to get a temperature check because I'm this makes me curious just based on like what other people have said. Like, what do you want? Like, where do you want the Mandalorian to go?
I don't know anymore.
Neither do I.
Because
like,
even if it's the show that I wanted it to be,
even if it's like now it's up in the air.
Yeah.
Where did you want it to go? If you can remember, where were you wanting the show to go before the season started? What were you wanting out of the show? Because I'll say one thing in particular. A lot of people wanted a lot of big wave stuff to happen with Grogu about him like taking up the mantle and ruler of Mandalore and everything. And I'm like,
he's a baby.
He is a baby.
Yeah.
He lives on a very long time scale. We are not going to see him fulfill his great potential in Mando's lifetime.
He will be
likely
98 years old when he's training with Rey in her next movie.
I just like, I don't understand people who felt like by season 5 he'll be leading Mandalore, and I'm like,
no.
There's no world where that's true.
Here's the thing. Like I didn't have an idea of where it wanted to go because the show up until before this season was very much we're just a fun show. We're a monster of the week, and we're slowly kind of built to something. But now it's like excessively building and becoming just big instead of being, a smaller scale thing. It is becoming, hey, Luke Skywalker's here, Ahsoka's here, all the Mandalorians are here, so many cameos galore. I reminiscent. I love those first 2 seasons now, and I'm like, I kind of just wish it could have been that. But again, you got to get bigger. That's the trajectory of everything these days.
I think I know what I was hoping for, or at least some semblance of what the season started. Because through the trailers, it's like, hey, we're going to proceed. We have more Mandalorians. We're going to go to Mandalore. I was looking for a lot more, excuse the pun, Mandalorian lore. I was looking for maybe a possible second Mandalorian civil war. Something that brings conflict into this planet that so far as have we only seen in an animated show. Now we've seen it, and we know it's not cursed. Like the second that Din and Bo-Katan said, the planet's not cursed. The planet's not poisoned.
Yes.
I honestly thought that by episode 3, everyone was moving back to Mandalore. It's like, word got out. Every single Mandalorian is getting their asses back to that planet. And then once they all get there, they're trying to rebuild. And then a power struggle happens. That's what I was expecting. And I've got none of it. And they could be pushed. They try to like building up to a really big event in season 4, or there's like, we're going to keep doing the building blocks. Moff Gideon's still out there. And I'm like, oh shit, that's right. He's still a thing. And it's just like, guys, what's going on?
I don't know what I wanted, honestly. I think there's a sense of like, I think kind of for me, I always felt like the Mandalorian was to be about was Din's relationship with Grogu and Din becoming disenchanted with the way. And I think kind of baseline, that's kind of where I thought that the show was going to go. I don't necessarily know if that's how I feel the show is currently moving into. We've talked about that already to death, and I don't feel like I need to bring up an old argument. But I don't know. Look, you do. I'm easy. You want to make a good show. You can. I'm gonna be with you on the ride. It's just I don't really think this is a good show this season, and that's kind of where my issue has become. And I just don't feel like your main character is compelling. And so, like, so to answer your question, Sparkz, like, I could be on board with whatever direction they want to go in, but I just don't think the characters are there for me to care.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like, if you're going to move away from what the Mandalorian was, that other thing has to be just as compelling.
Yeah. And
I just don't find it as compelling. The personal story, the monster of the week story of Din slowly, getting out of his shell, so to speak, both helmet wise and emotional wise, I thought was going to be considerably longer than 2 seasons. But like that just again, that arc now is just done. And
I will say
that just bums me out.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I did early on think Thrawn was a possibility in this show from season 2.
Yeah.
Because we saw Ahsoka before the show was announced, I believe. And so I pretty much figured that we were going to see Thrawn as a potential endgame for this series. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Thrawn is like, I mean, you know, again, like we know Thrawn is coming. It's just like maybe we didn't have to do all the setting up in this show, but again, like what other show would it have been? Would it have been Rangers of the New Republic?
It would have been Rangers of the New Republic.
It would have been Rangers of the New Republic because that's all like space stuff and like outer rim, like you know, getting in the outer rim stuff. So like,
I do think the stuff with Carson Teva and this episode and episode 5 and the stuff with the cloner dude in episode 3, I do think that stuff is a holdover from Rangers of the New Republic that Mandalorian has adopted.
Yeah, and having done like extensive reading, listening, watching of not just Thrawn new stuff, but Thrawn Legend stuff. All the cloning stuff is all starting to make more sense to me. It's just, man, it's the trajectory to get here has been really weird. It's been really weird. And it's really exciting to know like we are seeing the fruitions of it through some of it into Ahsoka, but
you know what's interesting?
The journey getting there has been a little wonky.
You know what's interesting? The Palpatine clone is already around. He's already out there. He's on Exegol. He's cloned already. They did it.
Yeah. He's got his Sith army, his thousands of dudes in cloaks.
No, he's building that right now. I don't know if I don't know if he's built Snoke yet, but Palpatine has already been cloned because I think the implication of the novelization of the Rise of Skywalker, I believe, is that Palpatine, when he died, his soul immediately transferred into the clone body.
Horcrux.
So
Soul Crux.
Fun things. What about you, Sparkz? What did you answer your own question?
I think that I'm still kind of getting what I wanted, which is that in broad strokes, the show it brought Bo-Katan very majorly into the front and center, which is what I wanted. It's pushing the Mandalorians into a trajectory of like bringing themselves out to the forefront rather than in hiding, and directly putting like whether they'll actually follow through on like the difference in ideologies or not, but putting those into the same conversation with each other in a direct way is the thing that I wanted on the show. I never wanted to see Din lead Mandalore with the Darksaber.
I don't think any of us did.
Yeah, I'm not saying you did. Yeah. People did, but I'm not saying there's people on this show.
Yeah.
But like that's not something I ever wanted to see. What I anticipated for the show, what I still think is possible for the show, is that like these ideologies are going to mix, and they're either going to cement themselves or they're going to break apart one way or another in a civil war. But I think either way, it ends up with Din deciding to step away from it and forge his own path with Grogu. And I do think that's ultimately where we end up at some point. Or that they do step away and then they come back and they take the forge of like, and specifically Grogu will take the forge up of what will Mandalorian be? What does that mean? Because I think we are very much paralleling the idea of challenging were the Jedi correct in what they set up? Were the Mandalorians correct in what they set up? And I think both of those things are happening in this parallel.
I really hope there is conflict and so forth. Because yeah, like again, like when we first saw that trailer, I was like, oh, there's going to be like some Mandalorian infighting, and we haven't really gotten that because like they haven't been built up together yet to have infighting, which is now what's going to happen, which feels like that's what next season's going to potentially tackle.
When I look at what's happened so far in the season in broad, these are a lot of the things that I wanted them to do, which is like pushing Bo-Katan back into the fold and pushing the Mandalorians into the light and all this kind of stuff. I think I do think like the major downfall of it is that Jon Favreau just shouldn't be the main writer on the show. I don't think he has the deftness to handle it.
Yeah.
And I think in another writer's hands, like all of this could have been executed better. But in a broad sense, like this is still heading on the path that I want to see with Mandalorian stuff. I remain convinced that the Grogu reunion was too soon. and that it undercut the season 2 finale, and that like that can't have possibly been the original intention, but they decided to do it this way, and so here we are.
Cold feet.
But like as far as like removing that from the conversation about it, like the Mandalorian-ness of it all, about all the Mandalorians, this is the path that I wanted to be going on in a general sense. So like I still feel there's potential for it to work and to land, and I think that there's just kind of going to be a bit of wait and see, maybe even past this season, of like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, 2 more episodes to come, and we will be back to do more Mandalorian when those 2 episodes are over.
I will say, like, I know we're not going to get into the specifics of it, but like a lot of the word out is celebration, not just about the show, but about like a lot of the other things that they're planning around other avenues of Star Wars gives me a lot of hope that there's a lot of story thought here that I think is very good.
Oh, so it
makes me feel like the Mandalorian can't possibly be on a terrible trajectory. Like even if the season is off kilter, I don't think like the long run of this show is in trouble.
Yeah,
because everything else sounds like we're heading for some highs.
If this entire season had to be those 2 episodes of Boba Fett for like the rest of Star Wars, like that's the payment that we have to do with this season. That's fine, because I saw the back of some dude's head and it made me really excited. I'm like, hell yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what movie magic can do.
But I think just like even like, yes, there is good buzz about like the next episode of Mandalorian, and we'll see how that pays out in a few days. But like the thinking that Lucasfilm is clearly showing, that they're thinking about like really broad concepts going beyond the timeline as we've known it in Star Wars, both backwards and forwards.
Oh man,
and like
hell yeah.
That makes me think like there is a lot of thought going into where has Star Wars come from, where is Star Wars going, and I do think that they are taking that same consideration to a Disney Plus flagship show. So I don't think that this show is in danger in a grand sense. I think this is just maybe an off-kilter season.
What about a grand
that in
admiral sense?
Doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That'll do her to 2022.
So next time you see us talking about The Mandalorian will be after the last 2 episodes have aired. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed recording it. Let's see, guys. This is Fake Nerds Watch. There's other Fake Nerds Watches. Check them out. There's currently Star Trek Picard Season 3 I'm doing with Cookie from Just a Little Podcast. A lot of fun. Really enjoyed that show. He does too. It's been a great time. So actually 2 episodes of that left too. So
the better of the star shows on TV.
But we have yet to record the 3rd to last, so stay tuned for that to be released. So other Fake Nerds Watches will come about soon as other shows happen. I don't think there's another current one that we are planning at the moment. So yeah, stay tuned for news on that. There's of course other shows you can check out on this channel. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel. If you are listening to the audio feed for Fake Nerd Podcast, like this video anyway. Just do it. Fake Nerds Watch, sorry. Do it anyway. Rate and review that. Yeah, rate and review that. Give us 5 stars. We have Basement Arcade. Basement Arcade is a video game Let's Play series. We have Basement Arcade Pause Menu. 2 new episodes of Basement Arcade Pause Menu are up right now. There is a quarterly and another episode. Ben, what is it?
Oh, it's me talking video game music with Jerry Trevino.
Good, check that out. There's, of course, Animation Station, Fake Nerd Book Club, and our new show, our brand new show, The Real Score, has released its first episode. Check out that show now for The Batman, one of our best viewed. No, that doesn't make any sense. It's doing really well. It's doing really well. And we're really happy with that show, and we want you guys to check that out. There's audio and video for that, where we talk about movie music. If you like movie music as much as we do, check out that show. New episode coming relatively soon. You can, of course, check out our TeePublic and our Patreon if you'd like to support us financially. All of that is linked below, or at our website at fakenerdpodcast.com. You can find us on Fake Nerd Podcast on all the social medias. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter, where I also write for CBR.com, AtomicGeekdom.com, and KaijuRamenMedia.com. Ben, where can they find you?
You can find me diving to sea in Mythosaur at BenMaga27 on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and also writing for Old School Gamer Magazine, Fusion Gaming Magazine, GoNintendo.com, and playing Mary Frankenstein and D and Dark.
Sparkz, where can I find you?
You can find me just keeping my fingers crossed for the direction of the Mandalorian at Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty. I couldn't think of a fun way to say it.
And Ryan?
Hey, y'all, you can find me holding the Mandalorian cheer stick at DJ Tony Snark 616.
Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Nope. So I had to do that. You know what? Whatever, guys. Check out the next Fake Nerds Watch. I've chickened out. Stay fake nerds.
Ding, ding, ding.